We are live on a Monday. What's up, everybody? Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live streaming on the X platform, YouTube, at Mike Gill Show. I'm your host, Mike Gill. What's up? Josh Henning, producing today's show. You out there? Holy moly. Draft weekend. You know, you wait. It gets here, and then, bam, it's over with. That's it. I got a lot of thoughts on the draft, though. We don't know what these guys are going to be. When you see, you can't grade the draft. I hate when people say you can't grade the draft. I adamantly disagree with that. You know why? Because you have your own opinions on what you think those players will be. I'm grading based on what I think that player might turn out to be. I loved what they did on Thursday night with Jahad Campbell. I think he is going to be a really good player and a really good fit for this team. So I like that pick. So I can, now, a couple years later, I can look back and say, man, my grades were poor. The second round on Friday night, Andrew Makuba out of the University of Texas. I think it's a really good fit for this team. I like the fact that they landed Andrew Makuba. Now, they got a little wonky, I thought, with a lot of trades. I can't even keep up with what they did. I mean, they were just moving back and then up and then back. And then I don't even know what they ended up doing, where they ended up going, and how they ended up with what they actually got. But I do want to take a look at some of the things they did a little bit later on and give you the ones that really stand out to me. The Makuba pick is going to be interesting because I think Andrew Makuba becomes a guy that – you take a look at how many day one starters does the draft bring to this team. And I think you might have two right off the bat. I would imagine Campbell, I don't know if he's a starter or he'll have some situational role, but I think he'll play enough that he makes an impact in year number one. Put it this way, probably a bigger impact than what Nolan Smith made when he was a rookie, right? I mean, do we agree on that? So I think that would be number one. Number two, Andrew Makuba, who if you listen to our Football at Four segments with Andrew DeCecco, he loves Andrew Makuba, who was you remember Andrew Makuba all the way back to his Clemson days. He was a All-American freshman at the University of Clemson. He then transferred over to Texas for his last year. He's a guy that I think you take a look at and says, man, he could probably be a day one starter. Like if you're to say right now, training camp starts tomorrow, that's a battle I want to watch. Makuba against Sidney Brown, Tristan McCollum, and that group there. They have upgraded, I think, that safety room. Now, it's a young player, but as we saw with Philadelphia last year, two young players changed the dynamics of their defense immediately. Now, the one thing about Makuba that I think you can question is his size. He is a little small for my liking for that safety position. He's, like 5'11", about 190, somewhere in that range, but you're not going to see a guy who's afraid to take a shot. He's a guy who's definitely, and he's good in coverage. He can hit. I think you're going to like Andrew Makuba. That being said, I think Jahad Campbell is a day one player. I think he plays day one in the rotation. He's either, a guy that, put it this way, he's not going to be standing on the sideline. I think you're going to see Jahad Campbell play right off the bat, right away, day one in there. I think you're going to see Andrew Makuba probably be the starting safety for this team. He is a guy that will challenge for that job no matter what. I think it's him, Sidney Brown, and then Tristan McCollum and Lewis Seen. Don't forget him. He's still here as well. But the Eagles do a good job of drafting best available player and also filling needs at the same checklist. Now, you go to round 3. I thought this was probably my favorite pick of the draft, was Ty Robinson from Nebraska, which round 4. They traded all their round 3 picks. They traded this pick like 3 times. I thought Ty Robinson's a guy who probably could have gone in the upper 3rd round and ended up falling somehow to the 4th round here. This is a guy who I feel like when we look back on this thing in a couple of years, you're going to say, how the heck did Ty Robinson fall to the Philadelphia Eagles? He's one of those guys that just for some reason has the feel of you missed out on this guy. And for whatever reason, Philadelphia seems to end up with these guys, but you remember when they drafted Milton Williams a couple of years ago. Milton Williams was the guy that no one really heard of. He went to a small school. Now, Nebraska's not a small school, but they're not what they used to be. I mean, they are nowhere near the Tommy Frazier Nebraska Cornhuskers, right? They are a bottom-level Big Ten team at this stage of their existence. Matt Rule, the former Temple coach, is the Nebraska coach. Ty Robinson is the Milton Williams of this draft. Workout, off the charts, but highly productive. He didn't get this selection because he's a workout warrior. He was highly productive in college, but the intangibles that he brings, I think that Ty Robinson will fill in the Milton Williams role, maybe not right away, maybe not as a rookie day one, but I think he'll be in the rotation this year. I do. I think Ty Robinson is a name that you guys are going to hear a lot about. And you will say, man, the Eagles found another guy. He might be my favorite fit and favorite guy of this draft class. I think, though, right up there with him, I can't believe the Eagles landed Mac McWilliams when they did. What was that, another fourth-round pick? They traded again. Josh, you got to see if you can. They started with 4 fifth-round picks. They traded the 1 fifth-round pick to get the move up one spot. I don't remember where they ended up getting some of these guys. Their first 5 picks, though, were all defensive players. But I think my favorite 2 were Robinson and Mac McWilliams from Central Florida. Now, to me, this is a guy that I was shocked was still here. He is a player. This guy can play. In fact, I'll make the bold statement right now. I think you're going to see like you did last year. I think Makuba and Mac McWilliams are starting on this defense. I think McWilliams beats out Ringo as the outside corner on this team. He is a guy that I think was completely overlooked in this draft.
Well, there's a lot of guys who are overlooked because we forget that this is the last year of the COVID guys. So there's a lot of players who they transferred multiple times. They had a couple extra years because of the COVID. Maybe they were lost in the sauce because of different transfers. You mentioned Makuba was at Clemson before Texas. And, listen, if you go by what the draft analysts say, your Daniel Jeremiah's, your Tom McShay's and others, they basically said that a lot of guys who transferred multiple times were overlooked to an extent because they were kind of forgotten prospects. And that's where in a draft class like this, there was a lot of value to be had. And Howie did a great job. What was, you said, 5 fifth-round picks and turning it into 3 new 5s this year, 4 6s in this year's draft, and getting a bunch of picks in 2027.
Well, I like what they did, and this is why. They went defense, 5 straight picks on defense. They had so much to fill on defense, and I don't think they just went need. I think they took the best available player. It filled the needs that they needed. They needed a edge rusher. They got one. They needed a safety. They got one. They needed a defensive tackle. They got one. But really, they needed a corner.
Yeah.
They got one.
But they also didn't reach for any of those guys. They didn't.
No, I think they got Ty Robinson. He should have been a higher draft choice.
You could argue every one of these picks, aside from maybe one, they got lower than the guy should have been.
Well, and this is why Howie kept moving back. He's saying there's a guy that I like, and he's still on the board. I'll just move back a little bit and just keep adding to my coffers here, and there's the guy that I want. I think Mac McWilliams, now, he started at UAB. He's been a slot guy. He's been an outside guy. But I think he will be the starting outside corner on this team. I think eventually he will probably beat Ringo out. I mean, that is my bold prediction on this Monday post-draft. Of these guys right now, Mac McWilliams might start at the outside corner. You might have, just like last year, same as last year, Makuba and McWilliams, you might have 2 start. Now, there's a possibility that all 4 of these guys have a role on the defense next year.
I agree that all 4 have a role. The only reason why I'm not ready to give McWilliams, be as bold as you are with him, is because I think that what gets overlooked about Ringo is he was drafted very young. And when you have guys who are drafted young, they need time to evolve and develop and all that stuff. And I think that we have not yet seen the best of Ringo.
Hey, I hope I'm I don't want to say hope I'm wrong because I don't hate Ringo. I think that I agree with you. I think that we might not have seen the best of Ringo. He might be one of those guys that needs to play more. And if he wins that job, great. I like McWilliams that much. When they drafted him, I was ecstatic.
For you, is it his versatility, or is it the fact that he was just so steadily consistent?
He was, first off, versatility helps, but I don't see him. I don't see him playing the slot, but I guess if you want to move,
well, for example, they played
Cooper DeJean around.
Well, I was going to say that last year you saw in the postseason they started playing more dime with DeJean and Avonte Maddox on the field. So is there a scenario where maybe one of these guys they drafted becomes that dime corner?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think they can get creative because DeJean. They can move DeJean to the outside if they want to for certain packages. So I think having another versatile player like McWilliams definitely, but me personally, I think you're going to see him be an outside corner and compete with the group of guys that are there: Adoree Jackson,
and
Ringo, Mac McWilliams, the rookie there. He's 5'10", 190, so a little smaller, but he's got a huge wingspan. This is a guy that, and if you watch him, and DeCecco's not on today, but when he's on Thursday, we'll have to talk to him about Mac McWilliams. He was tremendous in all of like the Senior Bowl stuff. That's where he really, really stood out. But if you watch it, he played. See, UCF's another Big 12 team.
Correct.
And every time, you get matched up against that team, you're thinking, okay, I'm watching. And by the way, he was a part of those UCF teams that were like on those where Dylan Gabriel was the quarterback when they were like 12-0 national championship.
Yeah, a couple years
ago. He's been a part of that program. He started at UAB, which is another good program. But the last 3 years he's with this UFC team that's been really good. But they moved over to the Big 12, and every single time you'd play and you'd say, man, this McWilliams, he's all over the place. I mean, just all over the place. So I like that pick a lot. Mondon Jr., another linebacker, just adds another depth. I think a Georgia player, was a 5-star guy. I don't know that he's going to make an impact right away, but I will
think
say
he will.
You like him.
I like him because I think he's your special teams ace.
Okay, as a special teams player. I'm talking about for the defense.
I think he'll have a small role, but I think that you're going to see him make some big plays on special teams. He was a guy at Georgia who was like an energy guy. He was a guy that was like, you're like, where did he come from on a lot of plays? And I think that they're going to look at him and be like, hey, you're going to have a part-time role in the defense, but your main role is go out there on special teams. I guarantee you he's going to have some big plays on special teams in 2025.
Yeah, that I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think, you get an athletic. He's a small guy. He's a smaller linebacker, I would say. So that's why I don't see him. He's undersized, productive, very athletic. He profiles as a very good special teams ace and a guy that if somebody got hurt, he's there. I don't have big expectations for him as a defensive player, but as a special teams player, I would agree with you there. Then they made the trade, which I was – I only bring this up because Gadsden was a tight end that I was interested in, and they made the trade with Chargers. I think it was the Chargers who drafted Gadsden. So they traded with the Eagles and drafted Gadsden. And I was like, that's a tight end that I would have liked to have seen the Eagles take. In fact, instead, they make the trade in which the Eagles ended up getting 2 more picks in return there.
Right.
One of them, and no, you shouldn't get all that excited about a backup center, but this team needed a backup center. They just have not had a guy on the roster. Last year, if you remember, in the playoff game, they had to move Landon Dickerson from guard to go over to center because they just didn't have anybody. They took Drew Kendall. Now, sadly, I remember his father, Pete Kendall, who played with the Seattle Seahawks. I'm getting to the point in my life now where I watch his dad's entire career and now the kid's getting drafted. But he's a real center. And he's an athletic guy. 31-game starter, Boston College. So, boom, you hit another need. We need to get a real center. Let's get this guy and plug him in there. And he's basically a version of the starter that we have, an athletic guy who can fill right in case Cam Jurgens got hurt. We don't now have to shift Landon Dickerson over to center and then plug in a new guard. So I like that pick there.
And by the way, his dad being a former player is part of the reason why Howie said they profiled him so highly, because he said the bloodlines.
Yeah, that's usually, it's always, unless you're Shedeur Sanders, the bloodlines don't help you out all that much. Sometimes
Shedor's a little different conversation, but
609-403-0973. But look, it doesn't stop there. I thought they did a great job in drafting Miles Hinton from Michigan. Now, his father was a tremendous player. You talk about bloodlines. His father, Chris Hinton from the Colts, was an unbelievable left tackle. Getting Miles Hinton in here to work 6'6", 345 pounds, works with Jeff Stoutland. I think you now have the makings of your next, Lane Johnson potentially. But then, as much as I like Miles Hinton, who, by the way, ESPN.com said he was the best developmental player in this draft, I think Cameron Williams might have been a better pick, the Texas kid. 6'6", 320, blue chip guy who was a tremendous player on that Longhorns team. So those two guys, I think the Eagles did a great job of filling needs with depth on the offensive line. It was one of the things we talked about entering the draft was they need depth on the offensive line for Fred Johnson, who left. They needed depth on the offensive line for Mekhi Becton, who left, and they filled a center spot, which they did not have a reserve player. I give all three of those picks, boom, boom, boom. The last guy, Antoine Powell-Ryland, total flyer on a guy who, by the way, has the most sacks in the country the last 2 seasons. He has almost 26 sacks over the last 2 years, which is the most in the country. He had 16 sacks in 1 season. That was third best in the country. Now, his problem, a little small as a defensive end, edge rusher kind of guy, 6'3", 260, but we'll see. I mean,
the Eagles have shown you they can draft small guys and develop them into.
That's the position now, right? Yeah. That's the position now. So I'm intrigued by the production that he had in college. But listen, I thought the Eagles and Kyle McCord, I forgot him. Why draft a quarterback? Because people call you for quarterbacks.
Right.
If I have one and you don't, you'll call me. If you need a quarterback, you'll call me. If you need a reserve guard, you're probably not calling me. You can find a reserve guard, undrafted rookie free agent, somewhere on the street, you'll bring somebody in. But if you really need a quarterback, you'll call me. And that means, hey, you drafted McCord. Do you like him? I'll take McKee. What do you want for McKee? Hey, I'll take a second-round pick. Okay. That's why you just add and stockpile quarterbacks. And the Eagles bring in Kyle McCord, who was a pretty damn good quarterback at Syracuse last year and Ohio State before that.
Well, the thing with him is that people may not realize the story of him, but he was a highly regarded recruit coming out of high school. And he did not have a very good working relationship with the coaches at Ohio State. And part of the reason why he went to Syracuse was because basically Ohio State wasn't giving him, he felt getting the best out of him. And he went to Syracuse and he led the nation in passing yards, which was a huge improvement over being a solid, not great player at Ohio State. And being at Syracuse greatly didn't just help his, visual development, but I think it helped him in terms of his professional and interviewing, because apparently, if you believe some of the reports out there, he interviewed very well with teams.
609-403-0973. Some text messages coming in. Phil and Brigantine says, Mike, love the draft. Seems like Howie did another amazing job. Many experts shaking their collective heads saying Philly did it again. Stoutland, get ready for Kendall, Hinton, and Williams picks. Lots of potential from what they're saying. Yeah, listen, we always get excited when the Eagles get offensive linemen who have size and strength and potential because they get the tutelage that a lot of teams just don't have, or, they get the most out of their offensive line. We always feel confident that if you're an offensive lineman with talent and potential, that's not going to go wasted here. That doesn't mean there have been guys here that haven't worked out. I mean, Andre Dillard was a first-round pick. He just did not work out here. They have failed with some. But it's these kind of guys. It's the diamonds in the rough. You look at the Eagles' offensive line, Mailata, a seventh-round pick, right? Juergens was a second-round pick. You look at Tyler Steen, a third-round pick. They're getting more out of those guys than maybe where they were drafted. Obviously, a seventh-round pick for Mailata. So I think Kendall, Hinton, and Williams, 5 years from now, don't be surprised if those three guys, one's playing center and two are playing tackle. I mean, you're hoping that Mailata's not done, but for whatever reason, if Lane Johnson retires and Mailata's not here, you think that you, in the 6th and 7th round, got the foundation of guys that could start for your team. He files it up by saying, Mike, what's your take on the tight end issue? Here's what Howie Roseman said about the Eagles did not draft a tight end. Here's what Howie Roseman said about it.
Just trying to be as true as we could to the board. Every time that we had the opportunity to pick, we were looking at the board and really trying to reflect what that work to put those grades in really should be reflected in the outcome. So we didn't want to kind of drop down at some points. There were some points where it was, close, but it was never at the time we were selecting the best player.
Yeah, best player. They kept to that. There was guys that were there sometimes. But he did comment on the Dallas Goedert situation. Here's what he said.
Dallas is part of the team, as we speak. Obviously, as we go forward, we're going to continue to address things on this team. And right now, nothing further.
Nothing further. That answer kind of told me, yeah, we didn't get the deal we wanted. And if we get something, we are still working on that whole situation. Phil, I did not gather from that bite from Howie Roseman that they are doing whatever it takes to get Dallas Goedert back here. Sadly. I hope they can figure out a way to make that work. 609-403-0973. Mike, what do you make of the fact that the Eagles were going to draft Shedeur Sanders, and that's why Cleveland jumped them? That would have been quite the spectacle. See, I actually liked it. It's the same thing we said about McCord. If you have Shedeur Sanders here, he knows he's not playing. Right? He knows he's not playing over Jalen Hurts. And could you showcase him in preseason games enough that teams would have called you for him? Same with Kyle McCord. You're going to see a lot of Kyle McCord in August in preseason games. And if Kyle McCord plays well enough, teams might say, hey, we had a third-round grade on him, or we had a fourth-round grade on him. We like what we saw in the preseason, and you get that call. The Sanders thing, hey, for value-wise, in the fifth round, you're getting a guy who some people thought should have been the first pick in this draft. You got to take him if you're Philadelphia in that spot. By that point, where he was still on the board, you would have had to have taken him there.
Yeah, and I think there were a lot of teams, once he got to day 3, there were reports that a lot of teams were now kind of following up to be like, hey, if we take you, kind of conversations. And listen, the Browns, they supposedly had a very high grade on Sanders, and they wanted to make sure that they walked out of there with him. Now, you can read into why he was on a day 3 pick or not. That's a whole different conversation. But listen, this is a guy who a lot of people did evaluate as a top pick, and if the Eagles had landed him, you would have had a guy that'd be like, hey, play all preseason games. We get a second-round pick for him. Great.
Well, that's my thoughts on the draft. What are your thoughts on the draft? Let me know, 609-403-0973. Over on our website, 973ESPN.com, many draft experts talking about the Eagles draft. We have it all in one tidy article of what people are saying about the Eagles draft. Check it out on our website, 973ESPN.com. Coming up, the Phillies took 2 out of 3 this weekend. Don't forget about them. Remember that team that has all the problems in the world? They did win 2 out of 3 in Chicago against a good Cubs team. Is everything back to normal with the Phils? We'll check in on them. Coming up, Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, Bob Wankel, John McMullen, football at 4, Sal Paolantonio tonight at 5 o'clock. It's all starting off right now on a Monday edition of the Sports Bash.
the whole tipping pitches thing, I think it's real. I think the other part of it was, I think his mechanics were effed up early in the season, and that's why he was struggling. So it was a combination of him getting his footing in Philadelphia, his mechanics being screwed up, tipping pitches. He had all types of these things working against him. You know, he's coming back from injury. He hadn't been pitching. Maybe he didn't get enough reps, or they were being careful with him in spring training.
That's Ruben Amaro Jr. on the Philly Show podcast on his thoughts about Jordan Romano. Now, we saw Romano have a good outing a couple of outings ago, and he looked like he was back, and then he stunk again. Are we convinced that Jordan Romano, who got the save last night, is on his way to helping this bullpen? Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com, posted last night. If Romano pulls this off, could be a big boost for the Phillies. I thought he looked great last night, Mike, but should I dive in with 2 feet on Jordan Romano?
Well, I'm not diving in with 2 feet, Mike. Maybe I'm sticking my big toe in the water, basically, right now. I think, unfortunately, you're going to have to see it from him from an extended period of time. But I just thought last night was a big win for both the Phillies because, you know, it gives them a series win. It gives them a 2-4 road trip. And I thought it was a big spot for Romano because if he had imploded there, you know, I don't know where you go at this point. So at least coming off last night, there's some hope going forward that he can be the guy that the Phillies envisioned him being when they signed him in the offseason.
Yeah, Mike, you know, the bullpen has obviously been a big issue. Last night you had Alvarado, you had Romano, so you had Kirkering. You know, if you could get those outings from those 3 guys, they look great. Alvarado looked great in the night. Kirkering did his job. And then obviously what Romano did, it still feels like they need another piece because as I was looking at this, apparently there's a report out there that they're keeping an eye on the closer from St. Louis, Ryan Helsley. It looks like, you know,
Right.
They are already starting to kick the tires, but they might need 2 extra arms in that bullpen. But if they could get what they got last night, that would be a huge boost.
Yeah, and I think the 2 key guys, Alvarado has been great all season long. So if he can maintain that consistency, that's obviously going to be great. And then you look at what Kirkering did. He had kind of struggled. I thought he threw the ball okay last night. I mean, I had a couple of deep fly balls off him, but I thought obviously better than how he's pitched before. And Romano looked absolutely great. So if Romano can sort of maintain that consistency, that's obviously a big boost. But, you know, you look at the overall bullpen, Mike, I agree with you that they still need another arm. They've got Matt Strahm back there. But last year they had Alvarado, they had Kirkering, they had Strahm, they had Estevez, and they had Hoffman. You know, so, they lose 2 guys, bring 1 guy in Romano. I still think they need another guy. Whether that guy is Helsley, it's going to be interesting to see, you know, just how much they're willing to give up to get a guy like Helsley. I think it's going to be a fascinating situation as the season goes on. You know, how much are the Phillies going to be able to – how are they going to balance the present against the future? What kind of prospects are they willing to give up to give this core really its last chance to sort of win this season?
Yeah, Mike, you go back to Saturday night, they scored 10 runs. They win that game. Luzardo pitches in that one, but you finally saw the offense kind of break out after this, you know, hibernation they've been in. Stott with 2 hits, couple hits from Castellanos, 3 hits from Max Kepler, and it just feels like that's what the offense is going to be. It's going to go through hot spells, cold spells, but if you pair that with a bullpen that's unreliable, that's where you have some problems.
Yeah, I mean, the bullpen was unreliable, and they weren't hitting for power or getting that key hit. It's funny, Mike, when you look at it, the metrics were pretty good for them, right? I mean, they've cut down on the chasing. Their chase rate is one of the lowest in baseball. They've got a good on-base percentage. Everything that we were kind of complaining about them last year, oh, they chase too much, oh, they don't get on base. Well, they did cut down on the chase rate. They were getting on base. They just couldn't seem to get that 2-run double or that bases clearing double or that 3-run home run to sort of put them over the top. That hit was missing. I got to believe that if you keep the fundamentals to the offense good, i.e. don't chase bad pitches, get on base, that they're going to have more games like Saturday's game than they've had in the first, 25, 26 games of the season so far.
Mike, you posted on before the game last night. This game has been elevated to a gotta-have-it for the Phillies. Why so early is it a gotta-have-it feel for you last night?
Well, I just thought there are some points in the season where you got to get a win, and I thought, look, a 1-5 road trip it sounds awful. 2-4 doesn't sound great, but 2-4 road trip where you take 2 out of 3 against the Cubs, you win a series against the Cubs team on the road that have been playing well. You kind of settle down, settle things. The last thing the Phillies wanted to do was come back home after a 1-5 road trip and kind of face the media at Citizens Bank Park tomorrow and have to, answer questions about why they're not hitting, why are they struggling, what happened on the road trip, what's going wrong. So by winning Sunday night, I think they can sort of calm the seas a little bit, right, and sort of give themselves a little break for the next couple of games.
Well, they'll have to do it this week. They don't play today, which kind of works out for them because now they don't have to have an answer to this Christopher Sanchez thing. But does this Sanchez thing feel like it's going to be something, or is it, hey, precautionary, let's skip them once? Or do you think you and I will be talking about this in about 10 days from now?
Well, I mean, right now they're kind of saying it's precautionary. They're not brushing it aside, but they're saying maybe they dodged a bullet. But again, Mike, when that left forearm tightness or right forearm tightness, whenever they say that, it's never good, and it's always something to be concerned about. So, yeah, I would still be concerned about Christopher Sanchez, and I'm going to be concerned about him going forward for the next couple of starts because I'm always going to have that in the back of my mind. You can tell me he's great today, but is he going to feel it in his next outing? Is he going to feel it a couple of outings from now? I just think it's always something to sort of watch out for. And I'm going to be concerned about Aaron Nola, too. I thought he pitched great last night. It was great to see, 1 run in 7 innings. But one start doesn't wipe out, 5 or 6 bad ones. So Aaron Nola took a step in the right direction. And again, that's why I thought last night was a gotta-have-it, too, because you got to have Nola straightened out. If Nola had gotten shelled again tomorrow night, the storylines continue. The downward spiral continues. They had to stop that, so he stopped that, too. That was another reason I called it a gotta-have-it. So, but I'm going to be concerned about both those guys going forward, both Sanchez and Nola, until, I see a couple of more, good, healthy outings from both of them.
Well, they got the win, and they got 2 out of 3. It seemed like a quiet 2 out of 3. I mean, they played an afternoon game that got rain delayed, and they played on Sunday night, and here they are wrapped around the draft where everyone's kind of paying attention. It's almost like what they needed, right? They kind of get out of the spotlight for 48 hours, and they respond with 2 straight wins against a quality opponent.
Yeah, and Mike, sometimes I think what fans don't realize, like fans are so focused on their own team. They're so focused on the Phillies. They're not, maybe taking a look at the big picture of baseball. But other teams go through this. Look at the Mets. They were one of the hottest teams in all of baseball. They sweep a 4-game series from the Cardinals. Then they take 3 in a row from the Phillies. Then they go down to Washington. You think the Mets are just going to roll through Washington. Well, they have 2, really heartbreaking, terrible losses. They blow a lead on Friday. I think they blew a 5-0 or 6-0 lead yesterday and lose to Washington. So they dropped 2 out of 3 of Washington. I just think it's important for the fans to know that the Phillies are not the only team out there kind of having their ups and downs. Everybody's going through it. I think the interesting thing, Mike, to keep an eye on is there's so many good teams in the National League. You look at 4 teams above 500 in the NL West. 2 teams above 500 in the Central, and then the 2 teams in the East. Before the season, we thought maybe 1 or 2 wild cards might come out of the NL East this year. You might have to win the division to get in the NL East, the way the National League is shaping up this year. So that'll make life a little tougher for the Phillies also.
Well, you mentioned it right now. The Dodgers, who another injury to pitching for them. I mean, the Dodgers, everybody just thought of fait accompli. Look at all the money they spent. This is a team that's just dropping like flies pitchers. They right now are a wild card team. The Padres are a wild card team. The Phillies are a wild card team. The Reds are they're all tied. So this might be fun when you have it all bunched up like this. We'll see what the Phillies can do to separate themselves. We don't get a lot of answers because that right-handed bat. It's funny. Doesn't this always happen, Mike? Austin Hayes is hitting fourth in Cincinnati. He's got like 5 homers in 20. I mean, this guy he's been doing in Cincinnati what the Phillies had hoped he would do for them in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and maybe it was just a case of health. I don't know. He had that bizarre kidney issue when he first came over, but he didn't really hit well, the whole entire year, even when he was in Baltimore. But obviously that's a guy that Dombrowski identified as a guy who he thought could help them. And, yeah, I bet you if Dave Dombrowski could go back in the time machine and take him back there, take Austin back to what he was now, back to October, it might be, we might be having a whole different conversation here. So it is crazy how guys hit in certain spots and stuff like that. And for Austin, it might just be a case of just being completely healthy.
You're right about that. He had that weird kidney infection. He had a back something. He had like multiple injuries. He only played in 22 games. I thought for what the Phillies paid Kepler, Mike, and what the Reds paid Hayes was a cheaper and better fit for this team.
Yeah, I mean, looking back on it now, you kind of say to yourself, well, why didn't they just keep Austin Hayes, right? I mean, and it could be a legitimate question, Mike, because they did give up a lot to sort of get him. So it's a legitimate question. Why didn't they just keep him? But, it didn't work out here. Maybe they thought, again, if they brought him back and he struggled on top of his struggles last year, it wasn't going to work if he got off to a slow start. But it certainly looks now like Austin Hayes is the answer to what the Phillies need, the right-handed power bat. And, when he was here, he hit a lot of balls to the wall. I remember, him catching a lot of balls and just missing home runs at Citizens Bank Park. Maybe the healthiness, he's got that couple of extra feet, extra jump on his bat, and he certainly is performing well for the Cincinnati Reds, batting cleanup for a Cincinnati Reds team that I think at 15-13, I believe, has the same record as the Philadelphia Phillies. So, yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but that's baseball sometimes, right? I mean, you sort of toss your hands up in the air.
And he is hitting in the best, probably the most hitter-friendly ballpark in baseball.
Right.
Remember, Nick Castellanos had 35 homers and 100 ribbies and hit over 300 with a 380 on-base percentage in Cincinnati. So that ballpark is very conducive to right-handed bats. So I don't know that Austin Hayes would do that. If you're just saying Hayes or Kepler, though, I probably would have said Hayes would have been the better fit for this particular team, although Kepler did have a good game over the weekend. The Phillies scored 10 last night. I do want to get one quick thought. Last night's game, I think you posted about this. It was kind of ambiguous on what you said, but were you referring to the Rojas Castellanos kerfuffle in the outfield that led to the one run? You said that's the Phillies season so far?
Yeah, that's it. Just sort of one play right there. That just they just seem to be a play away a lot, basically, like a drop fly ball between the guys. Coming up in situations with guys on base, not able to get key hits, stuff like that. I thought there were several incidences during the game last night where that happened. Not able to get a runner over, not able to get a bunt down here and there. They just seem to be one play away during this streak where they haven't played well from winning a game. And there were several of those opportunities last night, but then they were able to sort of get the runs in the 10th inning and get the good performance from Romano to sort of close it out. So, yeah, and again, maybe that one win last night sort of relaxes. Now everybody's got a day off. You got the Washington Nationals, I believe, coming in for 3 games.
Yep.
You would think the Phillies should be able to at least take 2 out of 3 against the Nationals, so you never know. But I just thought last night, boy, if they had come home like 1-5 on a road trip, dropping 3 in New York, dropping 2 out of 3 out of Chicago, I think, when they went to the ballpark on Tuesday, a lot of media questions, what's wrong with you? I just think last night they calmed the seas a little bit and give themselves a little bit of smooth sailing for a couple of days till they either turn it around or, Mike, they blow a couple of games and we're back here on Wednesday saying, what's wrong with the Phillies?
All right. Spent a lot of time with Mike McGarry this weekend. We saw some good baseball over in Margate, Coaches versus Cancer Classic. Boy, Saturday, they kept us for 2 days there. That game didn't get over to almost midnight.
Yeah, I thought the Gloucester Catholic St. Augustine game just ended about 5 minutes ago, basically.
And by the way,
but
everybody listening to us talk right now was probably there. That place was mobbed.
Yeah, I just thought it was a great event. The guys, Coaches versus Cancer, the guys who run it, Mike Edwards from Holy Spirit, Billy Kern from Mainland, the guys from the Baseball Performance Center, Ed Charlton and Mike Adams. They really do a great job. It's a great event. Not only do you get to see great high school baseball, which we saw Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and a lot of high school baseball, but you also, the first pitches that they throw out for the people who have been impacted by cancer or cancer survivors, the money they raise for charity, the setting of the game, different in Margate. Not a lot of high school games played there. Games played at night under the lights. It's just the sort of perfect sort of event, and they did another great job, and an event well worth coming out to, because you don't see atmospheres like that for high school baseball that you saw for the crowd for Gloucester Catholic St. Augustine. Just got to start the games a little bit earlier, Mike. I think that game started at 8:49, and like I said in my story, just before the clock struck midnight, the kid from Bishop Eustace struck a grand slam, or from Gloucester Catholic hit the grand slam to propel the Rams to a big victory over St. Augustine.
Well, it was a fun atmosphere, and we had a couple thousand people watching your broadcast and I on BFA Sports, the Mainland game and then the St. Augustine game. So there was a thirst for high school baseball this weekend, so it was good to hang out with you on Saturday, man.
Yeah,
Friday night, too. I forgot about Friday night. That was so long ago. I forgot we did a game Friday night, too.
Friday night, Saturday. We just got to get a little warmer and a little earlier, and we'll be great. But I think that is one of the premier events of the entire high school calendar. For the high school year, there's a couple of big events every year. We talked about the Battle by the Bay and basketball in Atlantic City, the Battle at the Beach for football over at Ocean City. And then this Coaches versus Cancer Classic. It's just a great cause, and it's really great. And it's just great to see the camaraderie of the teams together. You run into people, you're talking to people, you're seeing guys from other teams, you're seeing kids from other teams come and watch. It's just a great place to bring the South Jersey baseball community together for a great cause.
All right, man. Well, we'll catch up with you Wednesday. We'll see what the Phils bring for us then. It's always something, right?
Yeah, it is. We'll see how they do. We could be back on the ledge after tomorrow night, but we'll see.
All right, Mike McGarry, everybody, from the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com, here on the Sports Bash Live. You know what else we need to add? That baseball atmosphere in Margate was unbelievable on Friday and Saturday night. The Saturday night game was really unbelievable because the Mainland game ran long because there was a rain delay. The prep Gloucester Catholic game was scheduled to start at 7. There were a lot of people converging there at 7 for that game. But the Mainland game was still going on. So you had the Mainland Bishop Eustace crowd, which was very big, still there as the St. Augustine Gloucester Catholic crowd was starting to walk up. There might have been a moment there where you had a couple thousand people all converged at one site. How about a Friday night lights baseball every Friday night? You do a Friday night game of the week under the lights for Cape Atlantic League baseball, South Jersey baseball. That would be something pretty cool. To put the games under the lights every Friday night, have a game of the week, and let the whole baseball community come out on Friday nights to watch these games. It's just another way to get the people involved. I think the fans would yearn for it. You see these night games under the lights, what you saw this weekend. It was a really good event, so kudos to the Coaches versus Cancer guys. They did a great job. When we come back, more Sports Bash on the way, including why does Ruben Amaro think Rob Thompson is the best manager in baseball? That's next.
When you're hiring, have you ever felt like you're missing out on meeting truly great candidates for your roles? It seems impossible to find them, but they have to be out there somewhere, right? Well, they're not hard to find when you know where to go, and that place is ZipRecruiter. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter helps 10 million people with their job search every day. And because these people are actively looking for jobs just like yours, it's easy to find the right person right away. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. But if you're not using ZipRecruiter, you're missing out. So see what it's like when the impossible is easy. When you go to ZipRecruiter.com/radio right now to try ZipRecruiter for free. Once again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter.com/radio. Never miss out on great candidates with ZipRecruiter.
Greetings, Boomtown. Ever since this neighborhood switched to Xfinity Internet,
the Wi-Fi is booming!
Xfinity combines the power of internet and mobile with one all-in plan.
So we've all got lightning-fast, secure Wi-Fi speeds at home and on the go with Wi-Fi Power Boost from Xfinity Mobile.
You get the most reliable Wi-Fi with our best in-class equipment and unlimited data included. Plus, add an unlimited mobile line.
All for only $40 a month for 1 year. To celebrate this combo, we're mashing our shows together.
It's everything you need all in one plan. Plus, learn how to get a free 5G phone with a premium unlimited line. Now, sit back and relax with the smooth, relaxing sound
of face-melting acid metal!
Brilliant.
Visit Xfinity.com to learn more. Ends June 23rd with paperless billing and autopay to stored bank account. Restrictions apply. Xfinity Internet gateway required. Taxes, fees extra. After 1 year rate increases to $110 a month. After 2 years, regular rates apply. Actual Wi-Fi speeds vary. Most reliable Wi-Fi based on Open Signal Awards USA. Fixed Broadband Experience Report, August 2024.
All right, 254 Sports Bash Live. So last night we saw Jordan Romano come in and close out the game. Here's why Ruben Amaro Jr., based on that outing, thinks that Rob Thompson is the best manager in baseball based on that outing last night. Take a listen.
That's why I believe Rob Thompson's the best manager in baseball, because he tries to breed confidence in players even when they're not confident. It's pretty clear that Jordan Romano didn't know what the hell he was doing, like what the hell's going on. And for him to put him in that situation and allow him to thrive, I think that's what separates he from other guys.
You know, and this is what I talk a lot about with managers. It's those type of things. A lot of people judge managers based on, I didn't like them bunting last night with Rojas in the one situation. I thought that was a bad in-game decision. Rojas couldn't get the bunt down the last time he was up. I thought it was a bad decision to bunt with him the second time. Those things to me are minor.
Right, because at the end of the day, they don't always factor into the winning or losing a game.
No, but what Amaro said right there, that's how I view a manager. And it sounds like that's what Major League GMs, how they view their manager as well.
Right, because they want their players to respond to the manager, not just be told what to do.
All right, coming up, Bob Wankel from Crossing Broad is going to join us. Sorry, I got something a little... Went down the wrong pipe here. The water just kind of hit me in the wrong spot, so I'm... Be back.
Better than ever on the other side on 97.3 ESPN.
With GMF financing, qualified buyers excludes Traverse and Corvette excludes prior sales. Why is Bennett Chevrolet the area's most popular dealer? It's simple. Bennett sells new Chevys at the true GM supplier employee prices, not a penny more. Plus, Bennett gives you all the rebates, saving you up to 20% on your new vehicle. And there's more. Bennett's got available 0% financing, saving you even more money. And there's never any hassles, no haggles, just the best prices you can find. Plus, if you're looking for pre-owned, Bennett's giving you a minimum $10,000 for any trade you can bring. Yes, a minimum 10 grand for any vehicle you can get here. And you guessed it, there's no hassles, no haggles, just a minimum 10 grand for any trade. Savings up to 20% on new vehicles, a minimum $10,000 for any trade towards any pre-owned in stock, and there's never any hassles, no haggles, and no negotiating needed with our non-commissioned sales team. They're paid on your satisfaction. Together, let's drive. Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
As America's leading business lender, Bank of America is on your corner and in your corner. With over $5 billion in business loans and more than 90 business specialists right here in New Jersey, we help businesses thrive so communities prosper. What would you like the power to do? Learn more at bankofamerica.com/local business. Bank of America, official bank of FIFA Club World Cup 2025. Copyright 2025 Bank of America Corporation, all rights reserved.
home of the Sports Bash with Mike Gill, 97.3 ESPN.
Ooh, that's good.
WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City.
All right, 3 o'clock, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. The 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live video streaming on the X platform, YouTube, at Mike Gill Show. Be a part of the show right now. Hit us up on the text board, 609-403-0973. Thoughts on the Eagles draft, Phillies weekend. Got all that this hour. Bob Wankel from Crossing Broad is back. Look back at the Phillies' successful weekend. They win 2 out of 3 in Chicago. Should that be something that kickstarts this team? We'll take a look as Bob Wankel joins us right now on this Monday edition of the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. 2 out of 3. It almost felt like, like they do in September, late in the year, Bob, where they're under the radar, right? Like the Eagles are playing, the Phillies just kind of do their thing, and they kind of they needed the weekend where they weren't the focus. And they win 10-4 on Saturday night. Last night on Sunday Night Baseball, where they're in front of everybody, they get a nice win. They say, hey, we got this great bullpen with Alvarado, Kerkering, and Romano. Does it feel like things are back on track?
No. I mean, no. Just like getting swept by the Mets shouldn't make the season irrelevant and over. Beating the Cubs 2 out of 3 doesn't mean that they're back on track and ready to print their World Series tickets. I mean, it's the end of April. There were some positive signs in the series against the Cubs. There were still some things that I think you should be really concerned about. Look, the Phillies have a chance here if they win the first 2 games of this national series to close the month of April at 17-13. That's a 92-win pace. It's probably right about where everybody thought they'd be, give or take a game or 2 at the end of the season. Maybe an optimist had this team winning 94 games. Most people, I think, even the pessimists think that this is probably a 90-win regular season team, and then talk to me in October. I think that there were some real big positives to take away from last night, starting with Aaron Nola, who we like to get on and talk about all the time when things don't go well. But here he was on a national stage, shaking off a tough start, throws the ball extraordinarily well in a game that, for as far as April 27th matchups go, I thought was really important for the Phillies. You're not falling to 500. You're not going 1-5 on the road trip. It allowed them to salvage things. And again, the lineup did not hit for him at all. He had to be almost perfect, and he was almost perfect, and probably would have been unblemished if they had a center fielder that could do anything properly.
Let's talk about that play, because you're right. It's 1-1, and this is an interesting play. The ball comes, and it appears that Castellanos has the better ability to get there, but it almost feels like Rojas learned from the last time that he didn't call it, so he starts calling it too early and just couldn't get there. So it's like, you don't have to be a hero. Call the ball when you can, but not when you can't. So he just ends up calling the ball because he thinks he can get there. But it looked like a ball that Castellanos probably could have got.
It's absolutely a ball that Nick Castellanos could have got, but it's a ball that he didn't get because the center fielder was too overly aggressive with his call. And yes, he was trying to overcompensate for issues earlier in the season, which he was too passive, not going after a ball that he should catch. But the bottom line is that pop-up, and that's what it was, a pop-up by Nico Hoerner, balls that profile with that trajectory and speed, 0.10 batting average, expected batting average on that baseball. It has to be caught, and it was almost enough to have them lose what would have been the rubber match of a pretty big series, I guess, like I said, so far as April series go. And it would have brought them home at 1-5. They were able to overcome it late, though.
All right, Bob, there's so much I want to kind of dive into on the big picture of this team because, they win 2 out of 3 here. The Nola coaster, we had a good Nola coaster last night, but that's his first one of the season where he really looked like he was sharp and in command. But what happens after Nola now? You're going to get Wheeler. No Sanchez this week because of the day off, but big picture, do you have concerns about Sanchez?
I think that anytime you get an injury that is deemed forearm stiffness, that gives you pause. And it wouldn't be the first time that a team thinks that the player is going to be okay, and then you come to find out that just a little bit of rest isn't going to be enough. So I don't know that the Phillies are totally out of the woods on this one yet, but when you watch him throw the ball against the Mets last Tuesday, Something just didn't look right, and then you get the news that he's removed with that forearm tightness, and you really go, uh-oh. So the fact that he's been able to clear those initial scans and the initial prognosis has been positive, I wouldn't be overly concerned, but it definitely does give you some pause. And if nothing else, he's out of his rhythm now. Mm-hmm. Is he thinking about it? Is it something that he's worried about, or in his mind as he's out on the mound next time he is out on the mound? So I think it's something you put on your radar, but I don't know that you're banging the panic button yet. But yeah. I'll tell you what. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, because, he's not going to pitch in his normal turn here. So that says at least something. And I guess the dominoes of Suarez threw yesterday. Is he going to throw it? This would be his 5th rehab start. Is that odd?
They're certainly allowing him to take his time. And I know that the goal here is to get him built up to 95 pitches. I think maybe they would have altered their plan if they felt like there was serious short-term concern about Christopher Sanchez. I mean, maybe you come up and you allow Ranger Suarez to throw 75, 80 and start to fill that gap. So I guess we'll see how it materializes. I think if you look at what has happened so far here, there's big-time concerns about this offense. We've talked about it a lot, and we'll probably hit on it again today. And I think there's still a lot of question marks around the bullpen, even though it did look good for 3 innings last night. But I think where you hang your hat with the Phillies right now is this rotation. I mean, the numbers bear it out. They are anywhere between top 2 to 10 in most major statistical categories as a starting staff. They are deep. They have depth behind the 5 guys that you have out there right now. Ranger Suarez comes back. That adds to it. Andrew Painter kind of waiting in the hole there, as well as throwing the ball extraordinarily well so far in his first performances down in the minor leagues. So I just think that when you look at the strength of this rotation, no matter how inconsistent the offense is or how maddening the bullpen is, there's still enough here in the starting rotation that it should keep you in most games and make you a playoff contender.
You just mentioned Mick Abel. They've obviously got Painter. They got Suarez. They did move Seth Johnson to the bullpen. Abel, Seth Johnson, Suarez, Painter. They're all in the minor leagues right now. Are those guys, obviously Suarez will be, but are those guys all going to be factors in this season?
Oh, I think most of them will be. I think Mick Abel is the interesting one because, you see his last time out, he's touching 97 miles an hour in the 7th inning, and you say, hey, that'll play. The Phillies have multiple issues within this bullpen, and yes, are they going to be able to go out as the summer progresses and make some external moves to try to fortify it? Absolutely. But some of that turnaround has to happen internally, whether it's the guys that are already in the bullpen at the major league level, or they have to get creative and try to promote from within. As far as Mick Abel's concerned, though, here's the issue. He has struggled in his professional career, and his trajectory has not been what we expected it to be. I mean, I think that reasonably speaking, you would have liked to have seen Mick Abel up at the major league level in this rotation by 2025 when you first selected him. It hasn't worked out that way. But now, through 5 starts, he's got some momentum. The ERA is just in the low 3s. Velocity looks good. He's turning a corner, right? And he's probably enjoyed his best start from a professional sense here in quite some time. So this is probably the best that his outlook, his stock has sat with the Phillies in the last 2 to 3 years. So if that's the case and you get towards the deadline and you need to go outside the organization to make moves, you have a surplus of starting pitching, at least at the moment. And in order to get a return, who are you going to trade? You don't want to trade Adam Miller? Okay. You don't want to trade Andrew Painter? Okay. You probably don't want to trade Crawford? Fine. You're going to have to trade somebody of consequence in order to get back a meaningful piece. So maybe it's Mick Abel. So that's probably why you don't try to convert him to a reliever in this moment. Now, If he's with this organization in August and he's throwing the ball pretty well, maybe I'd think about it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Like, is he a guy that you would say projects it? You could say, hey, you got great stuff. We got a log jam. What about an 8th inning guy?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know. He's never done it. That's always one big part of it. It's the mental ability to hang in those high leverage situations. And then it's just the physical transformation in terms of prep, in terms of approach. There's a lot of boxes that you have to check to convert yourself from effective starter to a meaningful relief piece. But I still think for the Phillies in this moment, when you look at the picture and totality of what they have and what they need, he's probably best served in the short term remaining as a starter as they go out and they explore their options around the trade deadline.
All right, Bob Wankel, Crossing Broad, covers the Phillies, and, of course, we're talking Phils here on this Monday. Phils take 2 out of 3. There's a lot happening here, right? Let's go to the Brandon Marsh situation and get your read and takeaway on this. It seems like, he got back. He goes down. Now he had to be pulled from the game yesterday. Is this going to be something that we're going to be kind of going back and forth on for a while here?
Yeah,
are they not in a rush to get him back, in other words?
Well, it depends. Are they getting back the guy that's hitless in the month of April, or are they getting back the guy that they expected to have at the start of the season? He's down there rehabbing with a hamstring injury, and then he's removed from the game feeling some cramping. I think that's reason for concern. I don't know that it derails him another 4 weeks. But, the Phillies, especially at this point in the calendar, they're going to be cautious. They're going to be conservative. We'll see what happens. But I think that there's a real need to get him back. And, we've had so many conversations about this center field situation. And I don't think that either player is the option long term. I truly hope. And if the Phillies are serious about contending in 2025, they have to go out and bring in another player that is not Brandon Marsh or Johan Rojas to man center field. Let's just be real about this. We know what Brandon Marsh's weaknesses are. Is he going to be able to hit righties enough at this point to make himself a legit platoon piece? I don't know. I have doubts about that, right? But then you look at Johan Rojas. Yeah, he's a gifted defensive outfielder who often doesn't do the right thing defensively. And then everyone's losing their minds because he's hitting 370 after a nice weekend against the Marlins. But then you look at it today, since last Saturday, his batting average is down 105 points. And, oh, by the way, this is probably the most you're going to get out of Johan Rojas, and he has a 621 OPS. Johan Rojas is he's just not it.
No, listen. I totally agree with that. What I have said is, if I have to choose between Rojas and Marsh, I would take Rojas. Sadly, they're your 2 current options. But I do agree, you need a better option than both those guys. You can't keep parading these 2 guys both out there all season long. Neither one of them, they just don't complement each other, right? They're just not good complements for each other because Marsh can't hit lefties a lick. So the nights that a left-handed pitcher comes in, you have no right-handed alternative to hit for Marsh. So if you're going to platoon Marsh, there has to be an offensive player to go with him.
And you would at least think, here's the silver lining in all of this. It would appear that the Phillies know this because with Brandon Marsh out, there have been a couple of situations where they've elected to hit Cal Stevenson in place of Johan Rojas late in games. Last night, you see Alec Boehm walk to start. I believe it was the 8th inning, if I'm not mistaken. They try to bunt him. He can't get the bunt down. He hits into a double play. And then he comes up in the 10th inning and they have him trying to squeeze. They don't trust him to swing the bat. It's quite obvious that they don't trust him to swing the bat. So I think based on what you're seeing in terms of how Rob Thompson is handling this from the dugout, it would indicate to me that they are pretty aware that they don't have an answer in center field right now.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see. I'm really intrigued to see if they think Kepler's the everyday guy, or are they looking to maybe find a platoon guy with him?
Well, we'll see. To his credit, he's gotten it going here the last 7 days or so. He's hitting over 300. He's starting to drive the ball a little bit. The bats look a little bit better. He's hitting the ball a little harder. I still don't think he's the right fit necessarily, and his track record against left-handed pitching is nothing to write home about, but at least he looks like a useful part for the bare minimum, which is can he handle right-handed pitching? So I think it does remain to be seen. The issue, though, Mike, is that you can only do so much. So if you need to go outside the organization and get 2 bullpen arms, okay, then you probably need another center fielder. Fine. Now are you going to be able to go out and get a meaningful platoon piece for Kepler on top of it? I doubt it. I just don't think that this team has 4 moves of consequence mid-season in them this year.
Now, if you watch Jordan Romano last night, and I said, this is your one chance to watch this guy, give me what you think he's going to do the rest of the year, you would say, man, this guy's sparkling, outstanding. They were commenting that they think he was tipping his pitches. Is that enough for you to believe if he was tipping his pitching and they think he figured it out, what you watched last night, is that good enough?
No, he's been more in the strike zone lately, even the blow up against the Marlins and then the Mets game that was a disaster. The velocity has been up. I think he maxed out near 98 last night. To me, it really comes down to, we talk about tipping pitches, and there may be something to that, but it's, can you consistently execute your slider? Because there are times where he breaks those off and they look good. They have some bite. He can get guys to dive out of the zone on him, and then it's followed by a mistake. And I actually thought he got away with one again last night. Opponents right now are slugging over 700 against his slider this season. I mean, he's just been getting killed on it. And if he can find some consistency with that pitch, then, like, yeah, I don't think he's a guy that you should expect to see have a 10 ERA all season. But it's about consistency with him. Like, great, we saw him do it last night. You have to start somewhere. He did it in a big spot. They needed him. He came through. Awesome. Can you do it 3, 4, 5 times in a row? And that's going to be the real test on this.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if you're right, if he can be consistent the next 2, 3 times he's been out there, because he had a really good outing about a week ago. Then his next 2 after that were not so good. He is – I don't know how. He cannot hold runners on at all. I don't know how guys just don't take off on him every single pitch on second base. Like last night he's in with the ghost runner, and he looks and he does the same thing every time. I'm like, he cannot hold runners on. I was like, man, he is brutal to watch up there.
You worry about that, and you worry about that especially as the season goes on. There's so much to worry about with his performance the first month of the season that's so far down that you don't even think about it. But if he gets rolling and he's put into these, I think this is the third time I've said it on this call, but the high leverage situations.
Yeah.
Teams will take advantage of that. We saw that with Craig Kimbrell 2 years ago.
If I'm sitting in my living room saying, why isn't the guy on second just reading this guy and breaking? I mean, it is the timing of what he does is the same. He's so deliberate and herky-jerky. I mean, it is a mess watching him up there. I don't know how he's made it this far with that, with the way he does that. It's the same timing every single time. That's a big thing that you got to watch. I'm very intrigued, though, this whole thing with Suarez, Painter, you mentioned Abel's name. That's something to keep an eye on. Is there anybody else down at the minor league level that you're watching that could be an impact or make an impact on this team? I got a lot of people. Otto Kemp's name keeps coming up. They've got a couple guys who have been performing well. Any of these guys to you project that they can help the big league club?
Otto Kemp is somebody that Dave Dombrowski spoke about at the end of season wrap-up press conference. He had thrown that name in there. I'll kind of look, you look at each other and you go, okay, interesting. Look, he has swung the bat very well for them. He is a defensive liability, though. He's a below-average defensive third baseman. They have moved him around. He's starting to run around in left field a little bit. It would not be good. He would not bring plus defense to you out there, but the clock starts to tick on some of these guys a little bit. So if Max Kepler can't get it together against left-handed pitching in time, could that be somewhere he gets a couple of bats? Maybe. Alec Boehm comes up with a big sac fly late. He goes to the opposite field, actually drives the ball pretty well in doing so. But again, we've talked about this numerous times. We're in a situation where he's 109 at bats into his season now, and he's yet to homer. At what point do you have to start looking at that? Like, you get to August, you say, like, we need a different look at third base. I think there's going to be opportunities if these main guys, these core guys, don't start to improve a little bit in time. You're going to really have no other choice but to give a guy like Kemp some at bats.
Well, we'll keep an eye on that. I have not watched so much MILB.TV in my life. Suarez the other night, Painter on Friday night. He looked pretty darn solid. So you can watch those games for free, by the way, the Clearwater Thresher games for the people out there that want to see Painter. He's been throwing Friday nights generally. We'll see what his next step kind of is here. We'll look at Suarez's next step. He threw 78 pitches. They want to get him up to 90 is the number for him. He was at 78 the other day, so we'll see if they decide to have another start for Suarez. This would be his 5th start. We'll keep an eye on that. Bob Wankel at Bob_Wankel. If you liked his takes or not, you can hit him up over there, and he'll be sure to hit you back. Good to see you, man.
All right, talk soon, Mike.
All right, Bob Wankel's back Friday right here on the Sports Bash Live 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and live video streaming on the X platform, YouTube at Mike Gill Show. When we come back, a draft day is in the books. The weekend, the Eagles added 10 new players. What did John McMullen think about the haul they got, and what was the message with the draft class they brought in? 5 straight picks on defense, 10 picks, 6 defensive players. We'll talk to John McMullen next on the Sports Bash. 326 Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. I'm Mike Gill. Got some draft questions on the draft board here. 609-403-0973, I should say on the text board. Let me know your thoughts on the draft. Shaner in EHC says, linebacker, really? Well, I can't criticize Howie for much other than Rieger. It's nice to see a deep, young, robust linebacker room. Campbell has to be so thrilled as a generational Birds fan. Dream come true. I hope it pans out. Great pick and so not expected. Yeah, I mean, the Eagles actually took 2 linebackers in the draft, Shaner. We're going to get a thought on the Eagles took 5 straight defensive players, 6 overall out of their 10 picks. The messaging there. John McMullen, of course, covers the Eagles. He is the host of Birds 365 on the Jacob Media YouTube channel. He covers the Eagles for Sports Illustrated, and he is a frequent contributor on the Sports Bash. He joins me now to give us some thoughts. You know, we talked for months about the draft, what they could do. They traded all over the place. They moved here, there, and everywhere. They ended up with 6 defensive players, John. They filled a lot of needs. But let's go back to Thursday night. They move up 1 spot to get Jahad Campbell, and people are saying a linebacker. How do you see that player fitting into this team?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to play linebacker. I don't know if anybody listened to Howie Roseman on Thursday night, but yeah, they consider this an edge rusher first and foremost, and that kind of explains the disconnect, I think, with the traditional. And Howie even said it. It's not a change from our usual philosophy. So I think people are going to be very surprised when they see how the Eagles use Jahad Campbell.
Who is he now in competition with? You say they're going to be surprised at how they use him when we see him. Can you hey, is he with Jalix Hunt? Is he in that realm? How do you kind of envision him?
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be predominantly an edge rusher. I think if you look at how Vic used Vic Fangio used Andrew Van Ginkel in Miami, that's the role they have in mind, which is sort of a hybrid edge flex defender who can drop in coverage, occasionally play off the ball and stack in situations where you only have one linebacker on the field. He might be a joker on 3rd and long and rush from the inside. So he's going to be a very unique player that you probably haven't seen before in Philadelphia. At least that's the projection. But I think those who think he's here to be the off-ball linebacker until Nakobe Dean gets healthy, I think they're off base. And Howie kind of explained that.
Yeah.
I mean, he brought up Dallas. He brought up Micah Parsons. He brought up Abdul Carter. He mentioned, this isn't a shift from our usual philosophy. It's just a different type of hybrid defensive weapon they haven't had before. At least, again, that's the projection. Now, you can go back to last year and say that's how he sort of envisioned for Zach Vaughn when he signed him, or at least thought he had that kind of upside, be that player. And then Vic got hold of him and changed it. But Vic's on the ground floor of this pick. Like, I think this is what Vic envisions for this particular player.
John, Andrew Makuba, but before we get to Makuba, so do you envision Campbell being an impact day one player, or is he going to have to kind of, like Nolan Smith, his first year, he got drafted in a similar spot in the draft, maybe even the same spot, 31, somewhere deep there. He didn't make much of an impact his rookie year. You think Campbell will make more of an impact than, say, Nolan did as a rookie?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the goal, and they have a need. At edge rusher, we talked about, going into a season with Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt, Azeez Ojulari. I don't think that's where the Eagles want to be. So I think in 3rd and long, the goal is to get him on the field. And the goal is to make him a 3-down player as quickly as possible. Doesn't mean you can do it. Doesn't mean you can accomplish it. But that's certainly that's certainly going to be the goal.
All right, John Makuba, do you look at him now as the favorite to be the day one starter, or does he need to show you a little bit more to beat out a Sidney Brown or a Tristan McCollum?
No, I think Sidney Brown is sort of the default setting. So I think, as training camp arrives and it'll be Sidney's job to lose, so to speak. And if he holds on to it, he holds on to it, but they wanted to have competition. And that's certainly, I think, what his job is going to be, is to push Sidney Brown and see if he can do that. And a true meritocracy there. Best man wins, but I think Sidney Brown's going to get the first opportunity.
All right, Andrew Makuba of Texas, he was the second-round pick. And then there was just a plethora of moves. I mean, if you were watching the draft on Friday night hoping to see something, you got nothing. They just started moving all over the place. And then they end up taking back-to-back intriguing picks for me. Ty Robinson, who's kind of, I would imagine, John, them saying, hey, here's our new version of Milton Williams.
Boy, I think you're jumping the gun there. Fourth-round pick.
Well, I mean, Milton was a third-round pick, and I just see it as a guy who, when you say Ty Robinson, what stood out about him? He was a productive player, but he had tested outstandingly.
Yeah, he's a great athlete, and maybe maybe a similar trajectory to Milton Williams. I can see that. But it's going to take a while, I would say. And it took a while for Milton Williams. So I think that might be a similar tact and similar situation. But I do think he's got a chance to be the fourth guy in the rotation on sort of the interior of the defensive line. So I think he'll have a chance to contribute, but I don't think he's going to play a Milton Williams level of snaps that Milton had last year.
Yeah, I don't know if I meant like right away. I just meant like when they drafted Milton, similar trajectory of like, hey, we'll start you here, but by 2-3 years from now, we're looking at a guy who kind of emerged.
Yeah, I mean, that's possible, certainly. Anytime you talk about day 3 picks, and how he kind of explained, first round you want impact players. Second round, second and third round, day 2 you want to have at least above average starters. And the Eagles' philosophy, at least on day 3, is to find players with at least a trait that you could sort of get them into the program and develop what they figure is a very good developmental coaching staff, and hope to grow them from there. But, it's really hard for those guys to hit the ground running. If you make it to day 3, there's some, holes you got to fill in your game, and that's just part of the process. And, the Eagles do have a lot of confidence in their coaching staff. So I think that part of it is they certainly are high on them. But, fourth in the rotation to start, I think that's a good place for Ty.
All right, I'm going to make a wild prediction here, John. I think Mac McWilliams will be the guy that we're like, how did they end up with this guy? 4th-round corner. I would not be surprised if he's a guy we're hearing a lot about. Am I too high on Mac McWilliams?
Well, again, similar thing long term, perhaps, and we'll have to see. I mean, right now they need a backup slot corner, so there's not going to be a huge role to fill early on. And if you think about cornerback 3, because a lot of people are focused on that because Isaiah Rodgers, played a lot last season because of circumstance and played pretty well. I think that's going to be a Dory Jackson's role, or at least that's the hope, if Kaylee Ringo can hold down the fort as the starter. So I still think that's the plan. That's the default setting. And, corner's not a rotational position. So generally backups are only going to get in there if guys get injured. And obviously you don't want Cooper and Quinyon injured. So it's going to be there's not going to be a huge role, barring those types of injuries, for anybody. Never mind, never mind a rookie unless injuries crop up.
So they took 5 straight defensive players there. They filled a lot of needs. You know, they got an edge guy. They got a safety to add to the room. They kind of restocked that defensive tackle position. They get a corner. They get another linebacker. And then 4 straight offensive players. And I think, you know, you look at the offensive line, they needed a center to be the backup to Juergens. They just didn't have a real, you know, good option there. And the 2 tackles, very intriguing options. 2 of those players, Kendall and Hinton, both have NFL bloodlines. Chris Hinton, the father, was an unbelievable player, by the way. Pete Kendall from Seattle wasn't a bad player himself. So they got some intriguing prospects. And then, of course, they took a quarterback in that group of 4. So they did address some of the depth issues on this team that on that offensive line.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. You know, the Eagles just paid $68 million to their center, and I kind of disagree. They got a great backup center. I think Cam Juergens is the best center, the second best center on the team. That's because how good Landon Dickens. But they don't want Landon to do that.
Right, exactly.
They don't want him to have that role. So that part, obviously, he might be the best left guard in the NFL. So. He's a tremendous, tremendous center for those who don't know. He's an All-American at Alabama at that position. But he's so good at left guard. They don't want him to have to worry about like he did last year and move positions and things like that.
You won a NFC championship game with a guy who has had essentially no experience playing center at this level.
Yeah, but that's how good he is.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's. Yeah, he's if they switch positions tomorrow, he'd be, you know, a top 5 center in the NFL. There's no doubt in my mind. That's how good he is. So it's not that they needed a depth piece, but they do, you know, want to take that off his plate and don't want him to have to worry about that type of situation. So, and you know, Howie said some interesting things about Drew Kendall and the fact that, you know, he called it a center-deficient league. We always say offensive line. He said specifically center-deficient because most people just, they say, all right, we'll take this guard and have him become a center. And it's not a natural thing for people to do, to snap the football. And a lot of people are just not good at it. I remember, you know, the Eagles, when Marcus Mariota was here, literally, the second-team snaps weren't even relevant because Marcus Mariota had to play shortstop because the Eagles had nobody for shotgun snaps. They couldn't find anybody to snap the football to the point they had to bring Josh Andrews back just to get second team reps in training camp. So he's right as far as, you know, being a center deficient league, and I think that's, you know, one of their better day 3 picks. I think they did a good job on day 3 from the perspective of finding guys with those traits that Howie was talking about. They, you know, with Ty Robinson, it's athleticism. With Kyle McCord, he's just savvy. He's, you know, way ahead of the curve as a processor. And you know, you mentioned Miles Hinton, his father, and just he looks like his father. He's got the same type of body, but he hasn't, you know, developed in that type of player. But you can see those traits in him. Kendall as well. So I think they did a good job on day 3 as a whole.
Yeah, and then the last pick they got in the draft was a guy who, production-wise, you're not going to top. He was the top sack guy in the country the last 2 years, 25.5 sacks. You know, you hit a 7th-round pick, and you don't think much of it. But definitely when you have a guy that productive, you know, they've had guys like Teron Jackson, late-round picks that have just kind of stuck around for a while. None has been as productive as this guy.
No, I mean, as a whole, like I said, I think I see the day 3 picks and I get more excited about the day 3 picks, to be honest. I think there was, you know, and part of it is just volume as a whole, because I think people were disappointed coming out of the first 2 days with just 2 players and they traded out. And you look at some of the safeties that were on the board and you question, all right, was Xavier Woods better? Was Kevin Winston Jr. better? You know, you can make that argument, but the Eagles are looking for these, and Howie mentioned it a couple of times, and this goes to the day 3 as well, is they're looking for space eaters on defense and offense. Obviously, we talked about some of the things they did, and with getting a potential long-term solve, at least in NFL circles, as a backup quarterback potentially, depth on the offensive line, and on and on and on. So I think they filled a lot of backup holes, and we'll see if some of these guys develop. But other than Jahad Campbell at the top, I don't see a lot of day one impact if people are expecting that.
So after this draft, we waited and waited and waited. They added 10 players. What questions still loom for you?
Well, there's still a lot of questions because, some of the guys that they are sort of trying to, generate competition for, we don't have answers on them, specifically defensively, Sidney Brown and Kaylee Ringo. They still have to work things out with Dallas Goedert. Now it's more, there's more of an urgency to do it since they weren't able to get a tight end. That's probably your only issue on the offensive side of the ball, to be honest. Defensively, there's still a ton of questions in how things sort of develop because they lost so much on the defensive side of the football. I mean, you're talking about starters and Josh Sweat and Milton Williams and Darius Slay and C.J. Gardner-Johnson and, impactful guys who contributed like Brandon Graham and Isaiah Rodgers and Oren Burks. That is a hell of a lot of people you got to replace on the defensive side of the football, and that's why they went 5 for 5 in those first 5 picks because they have so many high-priced veterans on the offensive side of the ball that are entrenched in their prime of their careers, and now they have to flip it over and continue to get younger on defense. And anytime you're talking about youth, like it's fun to talk about Campbell as that type of player that Vic has wanted and Vic needs or doesn't need because he had, if you think about it, he didn't have that player last year. He still had the number 1 defense and won the Super Bowl. But he wants that type of player. And to project somebody who's never done it before is a pretty big projection. And then you talk about the size issues. I mean, they're going to have a 235, 240-pound guy as a pass rusher, just like Nolan Smith. And at some point, and you talk about, the safety is undersized. He's tremendously. He's 185, 187 pounds. So, Howie brought up speed, and you can't hide players anymore, and they have to be comfortable in space. But at some point, and, it's ironic because you say to yourself, could this Eagles defense stop their own offense? Because offensively, the Eagles like to bully people with their offensive line. Now, obviously, they have the best offensive line in football. They'll continue to have one of the best offensive lines. If other people start to replicate what the Eagles are doing, and you got a bunch of Jordan Mailatas and Landon Dickersons and Lane Johnsons on the other side, how do you hold up against that? I'm a little bit worried about some of the size deficiency on the defensive side.
Well, there's a little breakdown before we get out of here. The comment on Dallas Goedert didn't sound like a ringing endorsement that Dallas was going to be here.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, Indianapolis was one of the situations where people focused on because of Shane Steichen, and they get Tyler Warren who falls to them. So there's not a lot of people at this point of the calendar have budgeted. There's not a ton of salary cap space. There's not a ton of room to give Dallas Goedert the kind of extension he wants anywhere. You can potentially talk him back into, and the Eagles have done this before. They tell players, hey, they did it with Hassan Reddick. It didn't work. They did it with Josh Sweat. It did work for 1 year. They did it with Darius Slay. It worked short term. They say, hey, go out and look, find your market value. Generally what happens is they go out and look, they see the market value isn't quite what they thought it might be, and then sometimes they can work it out. We'll see if that's the case here, but I think the best situation for the Eagles and Dallas Goedert is to work something out short term that maybe gives them a little bit more guaranteed money and exchange that he'll be a free agent at the end of next season. And maybe you get another Super Bowl out of it.
All right, John. Well, the draft is in the books. We got mini camp coming up. Rookie mini camp is the 3rd and 4th next week. We'll see all these guys out in the field for the first time. Actually, it's this weekend? Yes, this weekend. The Eagles will be out there. Eagles are at the White House today. And, of course, they are getting honored for their Super Bowl win. And now the plunge to 2026 officially starts as the draft is in, or 2025 season. The draft is in the books. All right, buddy. We'll talk to you down the road. I'll talk to you on Wednesday.
All right, thanks, Mike.
There's John, and, of course, you can check John out weekday mornings, 8 a.m. on the Jacob Media YouTube channel, Birds 365. I'm Mike Gill. This hour brought to you by Broadlee's Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, your trusted source for heating, plumbing, service, installation. 609-390-3907, online, broadlees.net. Football at 4 is on the way. We'll get Geoff Mosher's take on the draft class and any other questions he has. We got a lot more on this Eagles draft class coming up for Football at 4, so don't miss that. The Nuggets, and tonight at 5 o'clock, you'll hear what Sal Paolantonio thinks about the NFC East landscape now that the draft is in the books. Did the Commanders close the gap? 5 o'clock, Sal Paolantonio on the Sports Bash. All right, 352, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Did you consume a lot of the draft this weekend?
Of course. Love the draft. It's a good time.
I always like the draft. I love the draft, and then I feel like it's like the first weekend that feels like there's stuff to do. So then you're like, I really wanted to watch a draft, but it's like nice out. I want to do stuff.
Well, I mean, at least it worked out that it was not the greatest weather day on Saturday, whereas Sunday was the better weather day. So for
Saturday
me,
was a weird day. It rained.
Yeah.
It was nice. It was warm. Then it was windy.
Then it rained again.
Yeah.
I mean, at least where I live, it was like rain in the morning, sunny in the afternoon, rain at night.
Yeah, it was an odd day Saturday, but yeah, I watched all Thursday night. I was in and out Friday night because I called the Ocean City game on Friday night.
Well, you had a reason.
Yeah, so I missed like the beginning, like the second round. By the time I got home, the Eagles had traded out like multiple times. They traded for like 108, then went back to 111, then just got out altogether.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to actually see them make a pick on Friday night, and then Saturday they were trading all over the place. I felt like they traded just to because they were bored. It's like, you know what? I'll move back 3 spots. You know what? I'll move back 3 more.
Well, that's what Todd McShay was saying on his show. He was saying that Howie can't sit still. He said
Jeez.
Howie needs a cigarette break to keep himself from making trades.
All right, coming up, we'll get Jeff Mosher's take on what Howie Roseman did and what he still needs to do. That's coming up next on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, live video streaming on the X platform, YouTube. You can watch the show and our conversation with Jeff Mosher from Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast. He joins me next right here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. By the way, thanks to everybody who stopped out Friday at Boardwalk Honda. It was great to see some people kind of cruise in, get their picture taken with the Lombardi, and go on with their day. Thanks for stopping out, everybody. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is going to be joining me here in just a few moments here to get us his breakdown and perspective on the Eagles and their draft class, which, by all accounts has gone pretty well. I know for those of you out there who like what the draft people like to say after the draft, Mel Kiper gave the Eagles an A-. They were one of only 5 A's that he handed out in the draft. A lot of people, Matt Miller from ESPN.com said he thought that the Eagles had the best draft of all the teams out there. He also said in a bold comment, kind of comment, which was 5 years from now, we're all going to be talking about how the Eagles nailed it again with the class of guys that they got. We just talked to McMullen in the last hour. We'll see what Geoff Mosher has to say about it. The guys over at InsideTheBirds.com, the day 3, they added 8 prospects on day 3. So, you take a look at why did they keep trading back. I think what the Eagles did was they trusted their board. They had guys on the board that they liked, and then they said, we can get these guys deeper in the draft, and what does that mean? They're cheaper. Right? The further back you go, you get guys who are just depth pieces. The Eagles realized and understood they needed to add depth to this roster. They needed reserve offensive linemen. They needed guys that they can develop and put into Stoutland University. They needed guys that could play right away. And they think they got that early with Campbell and Makuba and possibly even Ty Robinson, the defensive tackle, who they said, listen, and we talked about it with John, and I'm not going to say the way that it came out maybe he made it sound like he was going to replace Milton Williams now. What I was saying was they might have had the same feel about Ty Robinson on draft day that they had about Milton Williams on draft day. Not that he's going to go in there and make $26 million after his rookie season or have that kind of impact, I should say. But I like what this team did a lot on draft day because of what they filled. And the competition, that's the word that I think has to be portrayed here. The competition that this team brings to the table is what I like. You bring in Andrew Makuba. If you think he's going to start or not, if I'm Sidney Brown, I'm saying they drafted a guy to take my spot. What do I have to do? I need to raise my level. And if I win, that means I got pushed by a kid who really wants my job. So I love the fact that they brought in a young player at a position right now that's very unproven. So that will be a spot starting Saturday when they get to minicamp that I definitely think is one to keep an eye on, because now Andrew Makuba goes to a spot on the field that needs that has no incumbent, I should say, right? Defensive tackle. I got Jalen Carter. I've got Jordan Davis. I've got Moro Jomo. I lost Milton Williams. Now I insert another guy in that room that brings the competition level up. Mac McWilliams. He has flourished as a slot corner. He's also played outside corner. There's a opening on the outside, but he can also be versatile and play on the inside. This is a job that has essentially gone to Avonte Maddox the last couple of years. He's kind of been your default, like, hey, I can play inside, I can play outside, I can do whatever you kind of need me to do. So that is a player that I think is going to have a lot of value for this team. And then you get to the other end of the draft where they added all these offensive linemen to kind of, make this team have more depth. And I thought the point that, John brought up, which is, look, they have a really good backup center, which is Landon Dickerson. But they don't want to have to use Landon Dickerson in that role anymore. So I thought that was something. So that's kind of the layout of it. 10 players in all, 6 on defense, and 4 on offense, including 5 straight defensive players to start the draft. And Geoff Mosher joins us now from the Inside the Birds podcast. And, we talked about it for weeks leading up to the draft, and you finally see it all kind of start and how it goes and how he's trading out and moving back. And, at the end of the day, Geoff, did they fill a lot of the needs that they were looking to fill this weekend with the 10 players they got?
Yeah, Mike, Adam and I did a couple of podcasts leading up to the draft where we really talked about where knowing where the Eagles typically draft and what they need, and knowing that they don't really draft for immediate need, they draft for future need and building blocks. Where would they look? And on almost every position, you could say, man, they really need some depth there. They lost Isaiah Rodgers and Darius Slay. They needed either a starter or depth at corner. They traded away CJ Gardner-Johnson, and they weren't very deep at safety to begin with, right? So they got Sidney Brown and Reed Blankenship, but you needed safety. You needed depth there. We thought linebacker, inside linebacker especially, is an area with Nakobe Dean's injury. And as I understand it, they're really not, they're hoping he's back by October, that they need bodies there. They moved Ben Van Sumer to fullback. They lost Warren Burke. So that was an area they needed to address. And there are just so many different positions: offensive line, right guard, backup center, which they thought they had last year in Dylan McMahon, who then got claimed by the Rams. There were just a lot of depth positions, not a lot of starting spots, but depth positions. Defensive tackle, of course, where we thought they needed bodies, and they got a lot of bodies there. And then they added some bodies that were just value, not necessarily we need this position like quarterback per se.
Yeah, obviously Thursday night we'll go back there because you haven't been on since then. They took a linebacker, right? I don't know that he plays off-ball linebacker. How do you envision Campbell kind of fitting in Vic Fangio's defense?
I mean, he most certainly plays off-ball linebacker. I don't know why anybody would say that he doesn't. That it's what he just spent his whole last year at Alabama playing. And as I just mentioned, the Eagles have about 3 healthy bodies right now at off-ball linebacker: Zach Bond, Dallas Gant, and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. So, Mike, you know this. When you get to OTAs, you got what do you have, 90 people on your roster, and you have about third string and a fourth string, right? Well, so who's the third string inside linebackers? Who's the fourth string inside linebackers when you only have 3 or 4 healthy ones? So it's my understanding that they look at Jihad Campbell as someone who can play off-ball linebacker and rush the passer. And I people say edge rusher because that's kind of what Howie Roseman talked about, but he can be a pass rusher. He doesn't have to always line up on the edges and rush. He can rush the passer from an inside linebacker formation, or he can line up on the edges and rush there, or he can stunt, he can twist. I mean, he's an uber athlete. When you look at this guy, based on the information I got, is that I expect them to use him, or at least experiment with him, the way Vic Fangio used Andrew Van Ginkel in Miami as both a pass/edge rusher and also an off-ball linebacker, depending on the situation. And I'm surprised. I've seen some reports out there, and I think people are misinterpreting what Howie Roseman said. I don't think it's irrelevant that he can play off-ball linebacker. It's certainly an area he's got to develop. I'm not telling you he's going to definitely be an off-ball linebacker. He has to show that he can play it in the league as well as he played it at Alabama. And even at Alabama, there were some areas of it that he struggled. Okay. Obviously, if you just line him up on the edges and say, go get the pass, get the quarterback, that's a little bit of an easier task. But again, he will have the opportunity to line up in multiple spots at off-ball linebacker and on-ball linebacker. And if he's good enough, they'll find ways to get him on the field in both scenarios.
Do you see Campbell being one of these day one impact players? In other words, Nolan Smith was drafted right around the same spot, 30, 31. I don't remember what Nolan was, but he was late first round. He made essentially no impact as a rookie. Does Campbell make a bigger impact as a rookie than Nolan did?
I think the opportunity will be there. Remember when Nolan Smith was a rookie, the Eagles had not only Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat, but also Hassan Reddick, right? That was the last year of Hassan Reddick. They had a pretty deep edge rusher crew to begin with, and Nolan was raw, so he needed to learn. I think, again, if you look at the numbers, at least at inside linebacker, right now, you got 3 healthy bodies. Well, 4, because they drafted the kid from Georgia, Smail Mondon, right? So let's assume he's healthy too, and he's added to the mix. But you have an opportunity to get him on the field in, again, both of those spots, as long as he shows he can handle it. Maybe he's not ready for it, or maybe he's Zach Bond-like and, makes the adjustment really well. That's all. The Eagles themselves don't exactly know where he's going to fit right away because they have to get him on the field in the shorts and shells. Then in, August in training camp, they got to put the helmet on, the pads on, and see what he's best at and see where their coaching takes him. They just know they have an excellent athlete, an above, like a through the roof, off the charts athlete. They're pretty sure they have a good football player, but what they need to find out is where does he fit best? They have an idea of that right now, but that's an idea. The concept needs to be played out on the football field.
All right, let's go to Makuba, Andrew Makuba. A lot of people wonder, all right, is this guy going to step right in and be the starting safety here? They get him in the second round, Texas kid. He's up against, Sidney Brown, Tristan McCollum, Lewis Seen. Give us your thoughts on that pick.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy, and I credit Andrew DeCecco. Also, he was on this from the start. I mean, I think he mocked Andrew Makuba to the Eagles in the second round in 2 of his 3 mock drafts. So made a lot of sense. Felt the Eagles were going to hit safety at some point. Makuba, to me, fits Vic Fangio's scheme, maybe even better than, say, Nick Almanwari out of South Carolina, who just blew it up at the combine, because Almanwari is 6'3", 230. He's sort of like a safety who can play in the box, whereas Vic Fangio likes his safeties who can double as nickels, right? Nickelbacks. And that's really more Makuba's game. Safety, we'll see if he can match up in man coverage in that nickel position. Obviously, Cooper DeJean's going to be the nickel, but you can also play a dime package with 3 safeties and have him as the other slot defender, or just have him as a safety and you add another interior corner, maybe the kid they picked in the 5th round. So he's a versatile player. He's very light. I'm sure everybody knows that by now. He's under 180 pounds. So there was concern there. He was polarizing. One team told me that they loved him. He plays physical, great kid, tough kid, plays way stronger than his listed weight. And another team told me the same exact thing, but still had him as more of a 3rd or 4th round because they're worried about the size. I know everybody likes to say, but what about this guy at this size? And what about this guy, Buda Baker? Well, it doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. Yeah. I'll give you Emmanuel Forbes. Emmanuel Forbes was a corner drafted in the 1st round 2 years ago by the Commanders, who the tape showed it didn't matter that he was like 170 pounds. He played physical and he played strong. And that's why he went in the 1st round. Maybe he was a little overdrafted, but I thought he was more of a 2nd rounder. But the bottom line is he's already off the Commanders because he couldn't hack it. So I don't bring that up to say Makuba will not be able to hack it. It's just a counter to everybody who cherry picks the one guy who's undersized and says, well, what about that guy? Well, it doesn't matter. What only matters is, does Andrew Makuba make the adjustment well? And the Eagles believe he will, and we'll see.
All right, I was intrigued by Ty Robinson. I mentioned before because he kind of the replacement for Milton Williams, not immediately, but a guy who tested very well and is a player that maybe right off the bat gets a little bit of a taste, but by 3 years from now. He's interesting, though, because he played 5 years of college football. He had the COVID year, so he has played a lot of football, but you wonder 2-3 years from now if you're saying, man, they got that guy in the 4th round.
Yeah, it's possible, Mike. We did a couple of shows where we talked specifically about a relative athletic score, an RAS, right? And the Eagles really being big on that at certain positions, especially at both pass rusher and interior defensive line. And of course, Campbell was like a 9 point something, which is really good. I think Ty Robinson was in the high 9s too, undersized guy, but he really can get off the ball very quickly. Great athlete. And that's exactly what appealed to the Eagles. They see that's why they drafted Moro Ajomo in the 6th round, because he's a guy who had good upfield burst, not as good of an athlete as Robinson, but again, the upfield burst. We know Jalen Carter has it and is a great athlete as well. And Milton Williams, 3rd round pick a couple of years ago, mainly because he was very, very productive in college at a smaller program, but his athleticism and his testing was through the roof.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people look at Ty Robinson and see a guy that could possibly be in the rotation right off the bat. We'll see how the Eagles end up. He is a little on the underside. He's not going to replace Jordan Davis in any stretch. He is more of an undersized pass rushing type of interior liner. I love Mac McWilliams. I know you kind of threw him out there. I love this dude. It'll be interesting to see how they end up using him because he's played both slot and outside.
Right. He has played both. It will be, from what I understand, they're going to, just like we talked about with Campbell, Jahad Campbell, they're going to give him opportunities at both and see where he fits best. They really do need a dime corner because that's the role that Avonte Maddox played last year. And Avonte actually struggled in it at times, and then he had to play in the playoffs in the Super Bowl, and he wound up like completely playing way better and coming up with big plays. But, most defensive coordinators like to have a dime package against these big passing attacks in the NFL. And this kid could at least compete to start off as that if he can play well on the interior, or they can put him outside and have him compete with, which I'm sure they'll also do, with their outside corner group that right now includes Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson and Eli Ricks. And they'll see. I would say what holds Mac McWilliams back is that it's not just his size, that he's like 5'10", but small hands, doesn't have great arm length. So on the outside, that can work against you. It seems much more fit for the nickelback position, but that's why you put him out there. You work him in both, and you see where it comes in best. And not surprisingly, Mike, he scored a 9.84 out of 10 in the RAS, which is a relative athletic score. It's a common theme throughout most of their draft picks. Even Makuba, who had a lower RAS, he ran a really fast 40. But for some reason, I'm not the analytics expert, but your measurables count toward your RAS. So the fact that he's really small reduces his score, Makuba I'm talking about, even though he ran a really good 40.
All right, Geoff Mosher, we're looking at the Eagles draft class, kind of taking a look back. They took 5 straight defensive players and then went with 4 straight offensive players, 3 on the offensive line, 2 of which have NFL bloodlines. Drew Kendall, Miles Hinton, their fathers both played the offensive line. Cameron Williams, another guy there. So they really went with offensive line depth, and they do what they generally do, which is go Kyle McCord, and that became a story because there were some reports that the Eagles had some interest in Shedeur Sanders. The Browns jumped over the Eagles to make sure that they got Sanders, and the Eagles said, okay, fine, we'll take the next quarterback on our board. They went with McCord, but they get those 4. But the 3 offensive linemen, obviously the Eagles value, and they just stocked up the depth. And they did it with 2 guys, all 3 really intriguing players, but 2 with NFL bloodlines.
Well, I like to refer to what they did on day 3, and Adam and I talked about this in the pod that dropped this morning, as a big dartboard, and you just throw darts. This draft in particular, Mike, was not long and deep on talent at a lot of positions, especially ones that the Eagles value. It was kind of top heavy. So that's why you see them completely trade out of the 3rd round. They had their eyes on some offensive linemen. They left. They didn't want to trade up for them. So they got out of the 3rd round. And then in the 4th round, after they picked Ty Robinson, they had another 4th round pick. Another offensive lineman went off the board to the Colts, I believe. And then they were out of the 4th round. So what does that tell you? The Eagles didn't really love the middle round value here. They like the late round value. But when you like the late round value, what you're essentially saying is you think that there are some real high upside guys here. You throw a dart and you hope it works out. So we can go through all the names. Each one of them has some strengths. Each one of them has some weaknesses and some downsides. And, you hope that when you throw these darts, you don't expect all of them to hit the bullseye. If you hit 1 on or 2 of them,
absolutely,
then you've done your job, especially in a draft like this, which is why, by the way, I crack up when I see these people who are just aiming for headlines and clicks say, oh, the Eagles won this draft 5 years down the road is going to be considered the best. Why? Based on what? Like what is it? I like the draft approach. I have no issues with anybody that they took, but who is it that they took in this day 3 that makes people think that this is going to be the greatest draft ever?
Well, I will say, in defense of those people, when you're doing draft grades, you are grading yourself on what you project those players to be.
Right. So, take the guy out of Texas, right? I think people are really excited.
Cameron Williams.
Yeah. I can tell you personally that there's not the same enthusiasm among NFL teams about Cameron Williams. That's why he went late. He's played overweight, and you could convince me he'll be all right in 2 or 3 years under Stoutland University. You could convince me he'll be out of the league in 2 or 3 years if he doesn't get his act together. So, who knows?
And then you get the guy in the 7th round who is the 25.5 sacks. I mean, when you get a guy that productive, people are like, whoa, and I talk about this, because the Eagles have taken guys like Teron Jackson. Yeah. There's another guy that I feel like was in that. What was it? Quentin Johnson. Yes. Patrick Johnson. Those 2 guys were in the same draft, and I feel like they've just been getting cut and back multiple times. They're just kind of special teams players. Yeah. But neither one of those guys have been as productive as this player was at a higher level than Patrick and Teron Jackson both played at.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fair. And I actually like that. I mean, I have no issue again with any of the picks I always grade an approach, and I think the Eagles' approach was the correct one for who they are and what they do. But I particularly did like that guy because, again, like you said, he was productive at a major program. His athleticism, he's one of the few guys where the athleticism doesn't jump out, but that's because you're literally picking in the latest of the late rounds, and you're just trying to hope that something translates well.
Well, the draft is over. That's it. 10 picks, 3 days. Not upset about it. But minicamp is on Saturday, and we'll get a chance to see all these guys for the first time. They will be on the field Saturday and Sunday, and it all begins the end of the Eagles Super Bowl run. They're at the White House today, so that will kind of end the Super Bowl season, and now it'll be on to defending that Super Bowl trophy, and we'll have all the coverage right here on Football at 4 with the guys from the Inside the Birds podcast, and I know you guys will have a ton of off-season mini camp, training camp coverage. Training camp's going to be here before we know it, man. Don't blink.
I will not blink, and by the way, on Wednesday, I might have a special announcement for you. We'll see.
All right. Well, there's some news for you there. All right, Sports Bash Live, Wednesday with Mosher, possibly a special. Hey, I might have a special announcement for you. I'll text you.
Oh man, back and forth. Hey, we want to do it like Didn't who announced their decisions together? It was almost like the Heat thing, right? Where LeBron had a whole press conference.
Yeah.
And Chris Bosh is coming with me.
Yeah, right. Exactly. All right, man. I'll talk to you.
See you, brother.
Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast right there on the Sports Bash. All right, coming up, Nuggets are in the house. Knicks Nuggets are here. We'll get his observations on the draft, the weekend. Plus, what did one NBA insider say about the Sixers season? You'll hear that coming up later on in the show as well. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. All right, time for the Nuggets. Nick's Nuggets are brought to you by the Hub, gear that works as hard as you do. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. Busy show, recapping the draft, Phillies weekend. See, I think the Phillies weekend got lost in the sauce because of the draft, and it's just what they needed. They needed, like, people forget about me. Although they won 2 out of 3, we'll see if that carries over. They're off tonight. I hate the off night, right? I don't like the off night tonight because they won 2 in a row. You want to get right back out there. We'll see what Nick's Nuggets says about that, the draft, and more. It's the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN with today's edition of Nick's Nuggets. What's up, Earnshaw?
What's going on, Mike Gill? Hope you had a great weekend. Listen, 2 wins. You get 2 out of 3 from the Cubs up there in Wrigley. We know Nick Castellanos loves to play baseball up there, so you'll take a little nice weekend. They're like kind of in the backdrop right now. Eagles are taking all the storylines for many reasons, not just the draft, but I'll leave it there. But the Phillies, I want to start with them, Mike Gill, Nugget number 1. And I want to talk about the power in the first half of the season. I was reading an article in the Philly Voice today, and they were going through some of the team numbers, and one stood out to me. And it feels like this team always has trouble generating runners in scoring position, etc. They're actually not as bad as you think with runners in scoring position. They're right around the 10th in the league as a team, as a whole, with runners in scoring position. However, the problem has been the power. And you know how we've talked about this team's boom or bust. Their home run, power, etc., or they strike out. Well, the power just has not been there this year. They have a team total of 22 home runs. They had 40 at this point last year. They're about 23rd in the league in home runs, and they had 40 at this point last season. The power just has not been there. And as much as we talk about boom or bust with the Phillies, the boom has really not been there at all. That's a little bit of a concern for me, but I thought that's a fascinating number about a month into the season.
Well, listen, anything in a month into the season, I don't have a lot of stock in yet because, look, I play fantasy baseball. There's guys who are like in the top 60, and you're like, I'm not picking this guy up. He has 7 home runs in the month of April. Are you doing backflips to go get some of these guys? You're like, nah, it's only been a month, and they might have had 7 home runs in April, and then they'll hit 3 the rest of the year. So April's a tough month. I mean, look, that's why Charlie says it's hitting season. It's not hitting season yet. It's cold. The ball's not carrying. It's hard to get a read, I should say, on what you are. I know the Phillies, in terms of, somebody posted this, who was it the other night? The Phillies batting, I think it was Matt Gelb, I want to say. Let me see if I can bring this up. Matt Gelb from The Athletic, who posted through 25 games this year and last year, the Phillies this year are hitting 251, last year 248. Their on-base percentage is 340. Last year was 320, and their slug was 390 last year. This year it's 381. This year they scored 111 runs. Last year 108. Last year 27 homers. This year 21. They're about the same as they were last year, up and down the board. And by the way, the other one was, I don't remember who posted this, but their record in all their World Series years at this time of the year was 15-13 for every single one of them.
So it's funny because there's a different vibe around this team than last year. They have the same exact record through 28 games, same exact record that they did last year. But last year, it was, wow, this team got off to a massive hot start. They're on their way. They finally have gotten out of starting slow to the year. And it was a different total vibe. And it's been a total shift to this year. It's been a different kind of a doom and gloom vibe because it's been business as usual. Not business as usual. It hasn't been as lighthearted, it feels like. It just seems more business savvy approach that the Phillies have taken.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that the buzz is not the same because, look, this is the 3rd year of this group, and they're getting off to a start where there's been, 15-13. They were 6-1 at one point, and that gets you excited, and then all of a sudden you're like, what's going on? The holes are apparent, and the players are familiar, and familiarity makes you have more of an opinion because you've seen the failures of or the warts of some of these guys in the past, which means I don't anticipate that you're going to be much better than what I've seen. And some of these guys, you wonder, have I already seen the best of you? Did you already give me your best year? And if you already did, why should I think this team's going to be any better if we never won when you were a better player? So that's why, as time goes on, the frustration builds.
Well, yeah, and listen, they're in that Sixer territory now, right? Like, people got tired and we're just sick of seeing the same thing over and over again with the 76ers. People don't want to see that with this team. They started off going to a World Series. The first year they got to a World Series, it got to the playoffs, they got to a World Series. So with that, it's going to come as you go along. And if you lose one series less every single year, people are going to get more frustrated and they're not going to have the patience anymore. Like you mentioned, saying you're kind of used to this squad now. They're getting older. Have we seen the best of them? They started off so strong and they've gone backwards each and every year. Now they've won more games in the regular season, but overall in the postseason, that's where they've taken a step back.
Hey, I can't argue with anybody who's frustrated or that is, hit that Sixers point with this team. I think it's very fair to say, hey, this team is very similar to the one that has disappointed me over the last couple of years. And
right.
I could not sit here and say, I'm going to try to talk you out of that. I don't think that's fair. I think it's fair to say this is frustrating. I'm frustrated. I think the team could have done a better job in the offseason of maybe shaking it up a little bit. The fact that they decided to stick with essentially the same group that has failed them offensively the last couple of years. And then this bullpen. I mean, this bullpen is a massive issue, and they decided, hey, you know what? We're going to go with a lesser bullpen than the one we had a year ago. I could certainly understand why people would be frustrated. To me, I will call people out for being irrational. This is not one of those moments.
Yes, I'm with you. All right, let's move along. Nugget number 2. I want to talk about the Eagles over the weekend, and it's something they didn't do during the draft, Mike Gill, and they didn't take a tight end. Okay, this was fascinating to me, and the Dallas Goedert situation coming off of the draft is something that I am taking a look at. And Howie Roseman was asked about this. He said Dallas is part of the team as we speak, not the Cowboys. Dallas Goedert, obviously, but I'm very curious the situation regarding Goddard, because they didn't take a tight end. Yeah, they signed a tight end in free agency, but he's still part of the team. He's an $11.7 million cap hit heading into this year. Zero guaranteed money remaining on that contract, Mike. Goddard's situation is fascinating to me because there's been so many rumors, and you heard the Colts were interested. You've heard the Giants were interested. That's the buzz. The Colts took a tight end. Okay, they have. I don't think you're going to trade him to the New York Giants. You're not going to trade him to an in-division rival. So I'm curious. I think Goddard's going to probably stick around because it just doesn't seem like there's going to be that interest out there unless something crazy happens. But it feels like he's going to be back in a training camp. And, Howie Roseman, he didn't get into it a ton. It means he might be trying to work something out.
Yeah, it wasn't a ringing endorsement. He said he's, quote, part of the team as we speak. Yeah. I wouldn't say that's a vote of confidence. No. Hey, man, we're trying to get you back here. He's in a contract year. He's been in all the trade rumors throughout the offseason. So I don't think the Eagles got an offer that they wanted. We heard Josina Anderson. She was on the show. They wanted a fourth-round pick. Fourth round came and went. They got nothing there. I'm a little bit surprised that they didn't take a tight end in the draft, which means I guess there's still some hope that they can bring Goddard back, because I can't imagine them going into the season with Grant Calcaterra, Harrison Bryant, Kenyon Green, Kenyon, who's the not Green, he's the lineman, whoever the tight end was from the Colts that they brought in, whose name's escaping me right now. But I can't imagine that they come to training camp with that group of guys. So maybe the way he said it, he's a part of the team as we speak. It doesn't sound like a vote of confidence, but maybe it's more likely that Goddard's here than – I mean, we've seen this before where it felt like a guy was definitively leaving. I think it was Darius Slay a couple of years ago was a high-profile guy.
Last offseason, not this past – the last offseason, he was gone. It was essentially like he was gone.
And it looked like he was out the door. I think they released Fletcher Cox one year, and then they brought him right back. I mean, so they've done some things like that where you're like, hey, what's going on here? And all the talk has been about has been about Goddard going, but maybe that's just, hey, all this speculation, and it ends up that he's back here.
Yeah, Howie didn't give him a glowing endorsement when asked about that question, which was really interesting. They didn't take a tight end, though, in the draft, which I found fascinating because of all the rumors surrounding Goddard. Now, I was getting into this conversation the other day, and I want to get your thoughts on this. If they lose Goddard, I mean, is that really a big loss? I like Dallas Goedert. I think he's a nice player. But I don't think your offense is really dropping off that much if Dallas Goedert goes elsewhere and you don't have him this year. I mean, he's been hurt a lot during his tenure with the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't know if the offense takes that much of a hit if you eventually do lose him and you somehow trade him or you find a trade partner, release him, whatever. You get creative. He's not on this team next year. I don't think the offense takes that dramatic of a hit. I know he's a great blocker. He's solid offensively, too. We saw him push people down, knocking people down, stiff-arming guys. I like Goddard, but I don't know how much the offense takes a hit because they're so run-heavy.
I get your point. Here's the thing. In the biggest moments, in the biggest games, they needed him to step up. He was huge in the Green Bay game. I mean, his stiff arm just running through people will always be remembered. He was huge in playoff games where teams are saying, we're not going to let you go to Brown and Smith. You got to figure something else out. And who was there? There was Dallas Goedert. He had his best moments in the playoffs this year. So over 17 games. What's that?
Mike, I'll even add this. That Saints game, when he caught that pass and took it all the way down inside the 5 in week 3, that was a turning point in the season. If they lose that game, I don't know what happened. That was one of the biggest plays of the year. He's a factor, but he gets hurt a lot, and they've gotten by without him before. They've
gotten by in regular season games. Yes. Absolutely. But I think he is like an embarrassment of riches. He's a guy that, like, hey, in the game against the Commanders, he had 7 catches for 85 yards in that game, and he absolutely was a factor in that game. I mean, and by the way, he's a big part of the run game. He's a big part of the blocking in the run game that doesn't go that goes unnoticed a lot too. So in the Commanders game, he had a big game. I know the game against Green Bay, he had probably the play that changed that game. He had 4 catches for 56 yards in the game against the Rams. He had that 31-yard catch where the Rams were kind of keeping you in check, and bang, he hit you with that. So, yes, he is – you've won games without him, but is the guys who replace him going to be able to do what he does in the wild card game, the division game, the championship game? He caught 4 catches for 47 yards and a touchdown in the win over the Packers as well.
And that's what makes me a little nervous as to why Howie Roseman was so, he's still part of the team. Like, okay, like he had a big playoff run. Like he's been big for you. Like he's had big moments. But there have been games where they've gotten by without him. And I wonder if that's the approach, though. Like, are they looking at this? All right, we've gotten by without him. He's a lot against the cap. He's got 0 guaranteed money left remaining on his contract. What can we move on from him and we can replace him in the aggregate, I guess you could say.
Hey, listen, and by the way, the other tight end that they signed was Granson from the Colts.
Totally forgot they signed him.
None of those guys, to me, are suitable enough replacements for Philadelphia. Kyle Granson, Harrison Bryant, and Grant Calcaterra. You cannot go into the season with that group of guys as your tight end room.
Well, it's what's funny because it feels like they've just continued to progress and get a tight end, draft one, have one sitting waiting in the wings. I don't think Calcaterra is that guy. It literally went from Selleck to Ertz to Goddard. I mean, they have had a tight end every year. Like, they're just ready to go and pumping out tight ends. They have one ready. They didn't draft one this year. I thought that was very interesting that they didn't do that. So we'll see what happens with Dallas Goedert. Not a big vote of confidence from Howie Roseman, but he is still part of the team, as he said. All right, moving along. Nugget number 3. Let's talk about the Philadelphia 76ers, Mike Gill. I mean, you always got to bring up the 76ers at some point because, I got to talk about just the disaster of this team. And Brian Windhorst made some clarifications on the Stephen A. Smith show about the big contracts that they handed out to a couple of the guys that we know very well, Joel Embiid, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey. Take a listen to what Brian Windhorst had to say on the Stephen A. Smith show.
I was mildly surprised, but I heard that, ownership was on board and agreed with and endorsed, signed off, whatever you want to call it, with the moves that they made last year. And the two big ones are obviously signing Paul George and extending Joel Embiid. Josh Harris, David Blitzer, it wasn't like Daryl Morey went to them and said, this is what we have to do. No doubt, we got to do it. And they disagreed. They were on board with it.
So
I've said that from Jump Street. Everybody wants to blame Morey for these decisions. And as I've explained throughout is Morey doesn't go to the owner and say, this is what we're doing. He says, hey, this is a plan, and then the ownership signs off on it and says, we're on board with that because we're not spending. Look, Josh Harris flew with Dr. J to Paul George's house to recruit him here. He wanted Paul George to play here. He wants Joel Embiid to be a member of the Philadelphia 76ers. So we might not like that they made those decisions. This is not Morey acting by himself here.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up. Remember that picture that came out? It was all the owners. It was Josh Harris. It was Dr. J. They were in on it. It's not just a Daryl Morey decision. And trust me, I'm not defending Daryl Morey. They could have made other moves to make this team better. They could have been younger. They went too old. I get that.
Which Morey, by the way, did admit. He said, I probably did. I will not do that again. So, like Howie Roseman, you make mistakes, learn from them. Don't make the same mistakes. Hey, I went veteran heavy because I thought these guys had playoff experience, something that we have struggled with in the past, and I went way too heavy on playoff experience players. Okay, so now I need to find a middle ground here. I can't be too young because we need the experience, but I can't be too old. I got to find a little sweet spot in the middle.
And ownership wouldn't have signed off on the Embiid extension if they didn't think the plan heading into the year was going to work. They probably were consulted with the doctors. They were probably in on those conversations. They knew what they were getting themselves into. They handed in the contract. They gave Daryl Morey the blessing. That's what Windhorst is trying to say here. So as much as you want to blame Morey, you have to give ownership a little bit of blame too. They signed off on this. They could have said, no, we're not doing that. We want to see our assets used elsewhere and our money spent in a different direction. They could have said that. They are the owners. They could do it. Blitzer, Josh Harris, all of them, they could have said that to Daryl Morey. Obviously, you're going to listen to your person's advice who is making those decisions, but they also are complicit in what happened this year as well.
No doubt. Listen, moves of that magnitude, it's like the Phillies with Bryce Harper. Nobody sits here and says, man, Matt Klentak, what a great job signing Bryce Harper. Matt Klentak was the GM when the Phillies signed Bryce Harper. But you don't hear people giving Matt Klentak the praise for, wow, what a smart guy. He signed Bryce Harper. No, that's John Middleton saying, we're signing Bryce Harper. I'm going to write the check for $300 million. We're going to sign Bryce Harper. Anything that gets to that magnitude, generally the ownership is either at fault or at praise. The GM can say, hey, I think, and Morey talked about this, if we sign Joel long-term, I think we can get Paul George. Are you guys on board with that? Yes, we want to get Paul George here. Let's sign Joel, because if that's what you're pitching, well, the only way we're going to get Paul George is if we tell him Joel signed long-term. Otherwise, he's not signing here. Now, we all might say, I don't like that plan. Why would they do that plan? Why would you sign Joel and Paul George? Okay, that's a different conversation. But it goes back to we're blaming the wrong people sometimes, and that's why Morey is back and not fired, because people are wondering, why did Morey get let go?
And I think they want to see this thing out, too. I mean, listen, injuries were a massive part of this year. Everything else, too, I get it. All the stuff surrounding it, sure. But this team barely got to play together, okay? This team was not together. Embiid wasn't healthy. If Embiid's not on the floor, the 76ers are not going to be successful. And you don't know where he's at right now anyway. He had the surgery. I get it. It went well. We'll see how he progresses after this surgery. But Paul George was hurt. Tyrese Maxey was hurt. You didn't get a chance to see these guys really play all together, too. So I think that's another factor into why they're both back.
Yeah, well, listen, and someone just texted in and said, hey, it doesn't matter that no one's saying this is only his more decision. He's the GM. His plan was horrible. Did the owner make up this plan or just go along with it? Morey's responsible for this year's mess. I agree. Morey is responsible for this year's mess. I see this, though, as more of a one-year mess unless you are crippled with Maxey, George, Embiid, McCain all getting hurt again, and that would be a disaster. But if we take a step back and say, was this a one-year mess or is this a big mess? I think this is more of a one-year mess than a big mess.
I tend to agree with you. I think it's more of a one-year mess. Let's see if they can stay healthy. If not,
and let's see what they get in the draft. Let's see what they get in the lottery here.
Exactly. All right. Mike Gill, 3-pack for you today.
Brought to you by The Hub, gear that works as hard as you do. All right, Nuggets, see ya.
Peace.
Nick Nuggets are back again tomorrow in the 4 o'clock hour right here on the Sports Bash, live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, and live video streaming on the X platform and YouTube at Mike Gill Show. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and you can watch live Sports Bash. Or if you missed the show and you want to go back to a segment, maybe you're a Football at 4 fan, maybe you like Mike McGarry, maybe you like Bob Wankel, and you missed those conversations. Well, you can go back on the YouTube stream and watch it there or on the X platform. Coming up next, Sal Paolantonio joins me as we look back at the draft. What did Sal Pal think of the job that Howie Roseman did? Was there something they could have done that they didn't do that he wanted to see them get done? We'll ask him that when Sal Paolantonio from ESPN joins me next on the Sports Bash, live on 97.3 ESPN. All right, 5 o'clock. The draft is in the books, baby. The NFL draft is over with, but our recap and analysis is just beginning in the 5 o'clock hour as ESPN's national correspondent for the NFL. Sal Paolantonio joins me to give us his take on the Eagles 2025 draft class. He was on Friday's show and said if the Eagles can get Malachi Starks, they're going back to the NFC Championship game. Well, he was not on the board when the Eagles selected Sal, but you think they could have got creative. They did move up one spot. Should they have moved up a little bit more and gone in that direction, or did you like what they ended up with Jihad Campbell at number 31?
Yeah, Michael, I like Jihad Campbell. Thank you for having me on your show. I always look forward to being on the Sports Bash with the great Mike Gill. I like Jihad Campbell. He's got excellent blitz skills. He's very good at zone defense and dropping into coverage. He's a good pass rusher. He was productive at Alabama. He's got height. He's got a terrific wingspan. This is a Vic Fangio pick. Jihad Campbell is a Vic Fangio pick. We all know that Fangio values linebackers. Last year, on the road to the Super Bowl, the linebackers of the Philadelphia Eagles played at a very high level, including our man, Zach Bond, who wound up getting a big contract from the Birds to stay. I mean, I love Zach Bond, and I think there's no player that was more responsible for the Eagles winning the Super Bowl than Zach Bond. You get Jihad Campbell. Why did he drop? He was not a 30 visit. He was not one of the 30 players that visited NovaCare. Teams are allowed to have 30 prospects in. He did not visit. That really wasn't brought up or discussed much by Howie Roseman or Nick Sirianni. He had this shoulder surgery, torn labrum in the left shoulder, and that was repaired after the combine. There are question marks about his injury status and how much he'll be available, and we'll have to see. The Eagles have a great medical staff. They have a great training staff. Obviously, they wouldn't pick him in that spot if they didn't think he could work out. But, you know, Malachi Starks would have been a plug-in-and-play player at the free safety position. And everybody in the world knew that Baltimore wanted Malachi Starks. Everybody in the world knew that Eric DeCosta was sitting there above the Eagles and wanted him. And the Eagles have 20 picks available in the next 2 years. To me, God forbid, I criticize Howie Roseman. I think he's done a tremendous job. Should have been Executive of the Year last year. To me, and this is what I get paid to do, I would have tried to be aggressive and jump ahead of Baltimore and take Starks. They didn't do that. And then when they got stuck, they moved up for Campbell. I would have moved back. That's the one spot in the draft where I thought it would have probably been better to move back and not move up to get Campbell.
All right, so let's take a look at that. You said on Friday Starks was the guy. We know the Ravens wanted him. They should have been more aggressive. He would have been worth it. They did trade up one pick to get Campbell. Why not trade up more picks to go get Starks? So Campbell essentially kind of a fallback here. And then they go with the safety in round number 2 in Andrew Mukuba, who is, in your mind, more of a project, I guess?
Well, he is, Mike. I mean, he's going to be a good player. I don't know. He's only 5'11", 186. 5'11", 186.
Yeah, small guy.
He's not that big. He's not that big, but he's fast. He ran a 4.45 40. So he's fast. According to our lads, quote, exceptional range as a high defender with speed, great awareness to take away the deep threats. Now, I highlighted that. I used a red Sharpie to circle it because that's what Vic Fangio wants in his free safety. He wants exceptional range at the high defense position. He wants speed. He wants this guy who have a head on a swivel, awareness, and he wants to take away the deep threat. Because if you're coming at the quarterback with only 4 and not blitzing, like you did in the Super Bowl, the free safety like C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who I think was so great, the free safety's got to have his head on a swivel at all time, and he's got to have speed to close. So Mukuba had 5 interceptions at Texas in 2024. He was productive, no question. But if there's anybody who can take this guy at this height, but he has the speed, it would be Fangio. I just worry about why he would drop so far down the line. But I'm glad they took a safety for sure, and I'm glad they took a safety with speed. Now, the guy that I really like, Mike, is Ty Robinson, the Nebraska defensive tackle. I like him a lot. To me, this is the Eagles' steal of the draft. He's a high motor guy. He hustles right to the whistle. He can really get after the quarterback. He likes to use his hands to shoot through blockers. We watched him a lot on tape. We almost put him in the NFL matchup show, but we had so many good defensive tackles in this draft that we didn't put him in. But I like him a lot. 6'5", Mike.
Wow.
6'5".
Yeah, I said earlier, is this, I don't want to say right away replacement for Milton Williams, but as you mentioned, he tests it well, pops off the tape, the measurements, the speed, all that stuff, much like Milton. I remember when Milton was at the Combine back when he got drafted, people were comparing his workouts to Aaron Donald-esque level workouts. He didn't make an impact right away, but 4 years later, he got himself $26 million a year. Is this a guy that a couple years down the road, you're going to be saying, they got this guy in round 4?
Yep. He's got explosive, get-off-the-ball speed and very good hands and good, just solid technique. Now, he's 288, so he's a little smallish, but that's okay because they have Davis and Carter. So you put him on the field with Davis and Carter, who demand double teams, in the rotation. You rotate him in. Again, you got one of the best defensive line coaches in the NFL with the Philadelphia Eagles and the best defensive coordinator. They're going to take this guy, Ty Robinson, and they're going to put him on the field and going to let him use his speed and his exceptional motor to really work out for the Eagles.
You got Moro Ojomo, you've got Carter and Davis, and maybe Ty Robinson enters that rotation. Remember, Ojomo played, I think, a lot more than people realized last year. Sal Paolantonio is my guest, and of course you saw them all weekend long on ESPN's draft coverage. And one thing, if you were watching Friday night in the draft, you were waiting and waiting and waiting, and Howie kept trading and trading and trading. Did you like his plan in the third round? They end up not taking a third round. They get out and go to the fourth round, so no third round pick. What do you think about that strategy?
I was not crazy about it, Mike. I really wasn't. To me, this was a second and third round draft. You didn't have a lot of blue-chip players in the first round, and it was deep at defensive tackle, deep at some other positions that I thought, boy, oh boy, that was maybe it came down to there were guys in the third round they weren't crazy about, and they were just trusting their board. The thing that surprised me was Kyle McCord. Now, I love Kyle McCord. Mount Laurel, New Jersey, went to Syracuse, started out at Ohio State. He was extremely productive at Syracuse. I mean, extremely productive. He's got size. He's got really good arm strength. He's got good hand size. He's got all of the measurables. Strong, thick frame. He throws the ball into tight windows. His decision-making, obviously, must improve. When you have 12 interceptions at Syracuse, that's a lot. So he's got to improve that. But I don't know what they do with this guy, really. I mean, is he going to beat out Tanner McKee? I can see why they didn't take Will Howard.
Yeah.
And Howard was taken by the Steelers at 185, 4 picks after the Eagles took Kyle McCord, because Howard, in all of the ratings, is way ahead of Kyle McCord as a quarterback. And he was the one that Ohio State kept.
Yeah. What do you make of the fact that the Eagles were high? Their name was around Sanders, and then the Browns moved up. Did you think they would have taken Sanders, or should they have had he been there?
Mike, it's a great mystery, isn't it?
Big time.
It's a great mystery. Really big mystery. Why in the world would they be interested in Shedeur Sanders? Maybe because they thought, well, hey, Jalen Hurts can mentor the young man. That he goes to a team that won a Super Bowl. He goes to a guy who won the MVP. He goes to a guy who is not going to be threatened by Sanders, and Sanders is not going to threaten him. So maybe that was the plan after Sanders started to drop. And I just don't know. There was a lot of speculation that the Browns jumped ahead of the Eagles because they thought the Eagles were going to take Sanders.
Yeah, absolutely. And one question I got a lot today, Sal. You've covered this league a long time, so you obviously have some insight on teams take quarterbacks not because they need them sometimes, but because when you have them, other teams will call you for them. They don't need McCord, but so why would they have taken McCord or Sanders when they have a full quarterback room? Is this more for, hey, we'll just add here and people will start calling us because we have something that they might want?
Well, Michael, 66 different quarterbacks started a game last year. So that's the third year in a row that over 60 quarterbacks have started a game, 60 different ones.
Crazy.
And the reason is simple. Quarterbacks get injured. They get injured. And in 99% of the cases, when your quarterbacks get injured, your season is over if your starting quarterback gets injured. For a lengthy period of time. That didn't happen with the Eagles last year after Jalen Hurts got concussed in Washington. By the way, they never threw that flag, and that still bugs me that they never threw a flag on Frankie Louvu, even though it was a helmet-to-helmet hit. I would invite anybody to look at the video of that hit and tell me it wasn't helmet-to-helmet. Michael, you're on board with this, aren't you?
The Washington game, absolutely.
Michael, come on. Why was not that flagged, and then why didn't Frankie Louvu get a fine for that? Anyway, I digress.
And then, by the way, Louvu was the guy in the playoff game that was.
Annoys me. Michael.
Yeah, Louvu was also the guy in the playoff game jumping over the center. That whole charade happened.
Yeah, well, I like Frankie Louvu. I mean, I like his aggressiveness. I want him on my team, but he should have got a penalty.
Agreed.
He should have.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, 99% of the time, Michael, if you lose your starting quarterback for any length of time, your season is over.
Absolutely.
So it's really, really important to have a good backup quarterback who can win a game or two. Right now you look at the quarterback room, which of these quarterbacks can win a game or two for you, really?
Right. I was going to say, do you think that they're comfortable, they have to be, right, with Tanner McKee as the backup here? That's what their plan is?
The Mormon Missile?
He's a big dude. I was at the Giant game. I was at the Giant game last year, so I saw him at his best.
I remember that. The Mormon Missile put on a show, put on some pyrotechnics.
He did.
Listen, I like him, but how many games in the middle of the season is he going to win? God forbid that he needs to come in.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I'm all for, developing quarterbacks and the quarterback factory and all that. That's all good, happy talk. That's kabuki theater if your quarterback doesn't get injured.
If the quarterback doesn't get injured. Look, and you're right, although the Eagles are the one team, the Giants, I guess, with Jeff Hostetler, where the starter went down, a backup came in, and you actually won a Super Bowl. So I go with the fans, they look and say that position's very important. And the Eagles have told us over the years backup quarterback is a very important spot. But as we look back, they had 20 picks this year and next year. Should they have been more aggressive to get more talent with all those picks? Because you're not taking 20 players.
I believe so. I definitely believe so. I'll go back to what I said before. You had a lot of ammunition over a 2-year period, 20 picks in 25 and 26. You needed to find a way to go get Malachi Starks. Maybe they really tried hard and nobody wanted to play ball with Howie because, hey, he just won a Super Bowl. He just took everybody's lunch last year by getting Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. So maybe they said, you know what, phenomenal with this guy. We're not going to trade with him. That's possible. Yeah. It's very possible. It's very possible. But then trading out of the third round seems odd to me. I went back and forth. If you're looking for a grade from me, a couple of grades I saw were B+. I think this is more of a B- draft for Howie Roseman. Now, if Campbell works out, then it'll be and to me an A draft. To me, it'll be an A draft because I think there's some possibility for Robinson to be a really special player.
Are you
Go ahead.
Are you anticipating? Last year you had two players on the field almost right away. I mean, Cooper DeJean was hurt. Are you anticipating Campbell? I'm trying to wonder, like, Nolan Smith's rookie year, he was drafted 30th. He barely played at all, had no impact. Does Campbell, in your mind, have a bigger impact than Nolan did as a rookie? They're drafted one spot apart.
Super hard to know that. Remember, Nakobe Dean is a really popular player with everybody in the building, players and coaches alike in the front office. He's coming back from his injury. He's going to want to get on the field. I thought Jeremiah Trotter Jr. did a exceptionally good job for a rookie in a very difficult defense at a tough position. So, Campbell can be used all over the place. He can roam, which I like.
Yeah.
I like that a lot about Campbell. But let's see what kind of status he has. He'll get in the building, he'll do the OTAs, and then he'll go to training camp. Mike, I can't stress this enough. Fangio is the taskmaster of all taskmasters. They all said it last year. I remember the first day I saw BG. I said, "What do you think of Fangio?" He goes, "Man, no nonsense. No nonsense. Old school." He was the old school of old schools. When he came in there, he told everybody, "Hey, lose weight, A. B, you're staying on the field. Nobody's rotating out like you did last year." He made Jalen Carter a super whole lot of money when that guy, and he's got to put another season together, Carter. He definitely does.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Michael, so going back to Campbell, the point is he'll be swimming in the Fangio scheme. There'll be a lot to throw at him. He looks and sounds like a guy who's a sponge, right? When you talk to him,
yeah, oh yeah,
you can see he's got a great attitude, smile on his face, loves football, wants to play football. Football is his first and only priority. I think, listen, that had to pass muster. If I know anything about Vic Fangio and the way the Eagles run their operation, that was very important to them. They saw this guy, size, versatility, production, wants to be coached, wants to play. Football is his only priority. That's why they drafted him. That's why they said, okay, we can deal with whatever injury concerns there might be.
Sal, we'll get you out on this. And by the way, Sal Paolantonio, ESPN, covered the draft for the New York Football Giants, who were getting some good reviews on what they did as well. They got the quarterback in round one. They got a great defensive end in Carter early in the draft. They got the running back Scadaboo. So some buzz with the Giants, the NFC. By the way, the Commanders are heading back to the district. So you're going to have a new feel from the Commanders in a couple of years. And, of course, there's always Dallas there. But speaking of Dallas, no Dallas Goedert move, and Howie was, I thought he gave let's say, not exactly a vote of confidence that Dallas would be back. What happens with Goedert?
Good question. If I'm Dallas Goedert,
they didn't take a tight end the other night, by the way.
Did not pick a tight end. And I thought they would. It wasn't a great tight end draft, Mike. After the first 2 or 3, it wasn't a great tight end draft. There wasn't a lot of tight ends picked. But, if I'm Dallas Goedert, what Howie Roseman said might light a fire under me.
Yeah.
Maybe he comes back at a reduced rate. I don't know. But I love Dallas Goedert. He had some big plays down the stretch, Mike.
Huge plays.
Big, huge plays. You are correct. It's just a matter of staying on the field for Dallas Goedert. Yeah. The offense is going to be fine, knock on wood. They're going to score a whole lot of points like they did. And, we'll see how things shake out with Campbell and the rest of the defense. Fangio's got his work cut out for him, that's for sure. I will definitely talk to you this summer. I'll see you down at Uncle Bill's in Ocean City with Johnny G. And thanks to Johnny G, by the way, and the Griner team at Berger Realty, and for supporting my appearances on this great show.
Well, I always enjoy the conversation, couple weeks off. And, yes, by the way, rookie minicamp this weekend, then the OTAs and all that stuff will be getting underway. And Don't blink, Sal. It'll be training camp before we know
don't
it.
say it, Mike. I need a little time off. Mike, I'm not 38. I'm 68. Come on, give me a break, brother.
Well, at least you don't have to go to Brazil this year.
Oh, now you got to knock on wood. They may send me to Spain or Ireland, one of the other ones.
All right, Sal. We'll catch up with you soon.
Actually, Spain and Ireland sounds pretty good. We should go over there and do some shows,
Yes.
Michael. What do you
Well,
think?
if you go, let me know. I'll follow.
All right, brother.
Take care. Sal Paolantonio, everybody, here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. And if you're watching live on the YouTube channel and on the X platform at Mike Gill Show. I am Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. I hope you're enjoying today's show with all the coverage of the Eagles draft class. Sal said about a B minus. He's a little less enthusiastic about the draft class than I am. I think he really wanted Starks, which is understandable. I think Starks would have been a great pick and a good addition to this team, but I do like Campbell a lot. But I can see his reasoning. But that makes Makuba, a much more important pick that they need to hit on. Hey, when we come back, it's today's edition of Rye or Sigh. That's coming up next on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. All right, hanging out on the drive home, 528, Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Mike Gill with you. Busy show today. McGarry, Bob Wankel, Johnny Mack, Geoff Mosher, Sal Pal. You just heard what Sal Pal had to say. And now it's time for today's edition of Ryer's Side. Now, Sal Pal kind of sighed on the Eagles draft. It wasn't a hard sigh, but it was a sigh. It was a B minus C. He thought the Eagles should have been more aggressive.
Wow.
With the draft. Let's have today's edition of Ryer's Side. He sighed a little bit at the draft. I'm interested to see what everybody out there thinks. Give us a text, 609-403-0973. Hit us up on the text board with your reaction to the Eagles draft. I liked it. I liked it more than Sal did. He gave his reasons, and I could see some of his reasons, but I'm not sighing so much on the draft there. I liked what the Eagles did for a couple of reasons, not just because – hey, they got this player from South Jersey. I don't care where the guy lives. Can you play football? I think Campbell – now, there was a tweet that John McMullen just sent out that is a little bit concerning, I think, if you look at what it says. And this is from Albert Breer, who said one of the reasons, by the way, Ryan Rothstein's with me, concerning note around Campbell – Howie Roseman's first-round pick this year is a little like 2 years ago with Jalen Carter. In both cases, there was a reason why the guy was available. With Carter, it was checkered off-field history that Philly felt well qualified to manage. With Campbell, it's his shoulders and knees. Yes, plural, on both counts. Again, this is one where the Eagles are more equipped to take the risk than others because they don't need the pick to hit. So he's essentially saying, hey, there is a major, I don't say major, but there is a big-time injury risk here. That's why the Eagles were able to get this player.
Yeah, what's happening in MG, and I did see that. A lot of different reports were insinuating, or not insinuating, just reporting that that's a big reason or the reason why he fell, Campbell, as far as he did. But, boom, you just hit the nail on the head. I agree with you. That's why the Eagles are in the position they're in. They have the ability to take a flyer, to take a chance on someone like that. He's a top 10 type of talent who fell, and you just hope now he's a young kid. He's able to bounce back from those injuries. So it's a home run pick. I think that's a risk. That's a risky, big swing type of a pick. I know you said Sal Pal sort of sighed, a minor sigh. I don't know what else they could have done. I don't know how crazy he wanted them to get, MG.
I'll tell you exactly what he would have liked him to do. He said on the show that this was a miss because he thought they should have moved up for Malachi Starks, that the Eagles knew the Ravens wanted him and they should have been more aggressive because that player was worth it as a plug-and-play starter right away, and he felt that this was kind of a fallback option here, that they went from 32 to 31, that they should have gone from 32 ahead of the Ravens to get that particular player. So there was a specific reason why he kind of sighed a little bit on this.
Yeah, all right. I mean, fair, but we don't know. Maybe he knows this, but until you tell me otherwise, maybe the Eagles did try and make that play, and they weren't able to do so, right? We don't know exactly what they're doing behind the scenes with every type of, every time that team's on the clock, right? So,
listen. You never know what they were trying to do, what they did do, what they could do, what there was there, what wasn't there.
Exactly.
In the end, he really felt that they took a project in the second round in Andrew Makuba instead of getting a guy who's a plug-and-play player. Because now, Makuba, he battles for the starting job with the other guys, Sidney Brown, Tristan McCollum. Is he better than those guys? We'll find out in training camp, whereas he believed that Starks would have been clearly the best option.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. I like what I've seen and heard from Makuba. I think he's a guy that can come in here and win this job, but not guaranteed, but I think he can do it, and for a second round pick, that's all you can really hope for.
Listen, we don't know what these guys are going to be like when they go from the college game to the pro game. I think a lot of people like Stark's size a little bit better than Makuba's, who's a smaller guy to play safety in this league. That's the knock on him. That's why he's a second-round pick and Starks is the first-round pick. But, hey, we'll see how this all ends up going. But I will say I was a fan of the Campbell pick. Yes, he does have those injury question marks about him, no doubt about it. That's one of the reasons why he was there and how he said that. We thought he was a top 10 player in this draft.
Yeah. Before we transition to some fills, I did hear you ask Sal Pal a question that was on our list of to do here for Rye or Sigh. So we'll just carry this over for a minute or two before we transition. But no tight end drafted from Howie Roseman and the crew in the draft. To me, that has to signify, it has to mean something as it relates to Dallas Goedert, right? Like this Dallas Goedert stuff is so strange. We're not really getting any type of real answers or indication of if he's staying or if he's leaving. I have to point to no tight end being drafted as a signal and a sign that Goddard's going to be around, right?
You would think that's a sign, but the way that Howie approach it was not a vote of confidence. He's on the team for now. I mean, like, wow, geez, thanks a lot there, pal. It didn't make me feel like it, but hey, stranger things have happened. We talked about this earlier. A couple of years ago, Darius Slay, there was he's gone, and then he was back. So this has happened before.
Yeah, tough to say. I'll have to assume that no tight end for now means Goddard stays, but just a weird situation all around for sure. So, all right, let's talk some Phillies, shall we? As they take 2 of 3 in Wrigley against the Chicago Cubs. What do we make of it, right? Does that give us a sigh of relief from the Phils? Nola finally looks good, 7 innings. Bullpen looks good. Romano is able to come in and show us something for a change. Mike Gill, do you get a sigh of relief, or is it just more sighs of anxiety for you?
Listen, it's April. They're 15-13. In 2008, they were 15-13. In 1980, they were 15-13. In 2022, they were 15-13. They are 15-13 again. Their offense this year is about exactly the same across the board in batting average, on-base percentage, slugging percentage, home runs, you name it. Across the board for the month of April, they are about exactly the same as last year's team offensively. I can't get a feel on any team in April. I remember last year, the Phillies were like, maybe it was 2 years ago, when the Phillies were like 6 games out of the wild card, and one of the teams that were in the wild card at this stage of the season was the Pittsburgh Pirates. Well, the Phillies made the wild cards, and the Pirates were one of the worst teams in the league. After April, things change a lot. Why? It starts to heat up. The ball carries more. Pitchers, more innings on their arm. They're wearing down as the season goes on. Now, you would say, well, the Phillies pitching's not giving me any reason, at least the bullpen, on why I think they're going to have to fix that. But I'm not looking at April and saying I've changed my outlook on this team. I still think exactly what I thought before. I thought they would be about a 95-win team because of their pitching. I would probably think they're more in the 90-win range now.
That's something. That's something. I mean, you started out that rant, implying that it's nothing. But, to move them from 95 to 90, that's something. That's the difference between a playoff team or not. Could
possible. And my point, and I was going to bring that up, the problem is 90 wins might not get you in. In years past, 85 wins got you in. 90 wins you might be cutting it close. So I do feel like that is, unless they improve this bullpen. Now, if you wait to the trade deadline to improve the bullpen, that might be waiting too long. You might have to pull the plug on this bullpen quicker than you wanted to and find somebody else.
I agree with that, but also it's not 100% up to Dombrowski and the Phillies with that, right? Like you need someone to play ball with, so to speak. So
you're right about that, but they talked about it last night during the Sunday Night Baseball broadcast about why do teams wait? Like if you have a deficiency, why do you have to wait until there's a deadline? Hey, I'm not that good here. I need to get better. Let me get better now as opposed to getting better at the deadline. Like, why do teams have to have this deadline looming over them to finally say, hey, I don't have a good bullpen. I can fix my bullpen, but I'm going to wait to fix it until then. That's like waiting to fix a hole in your roof, and then one night it rains, and it rains and leaks all over. You're like, I should have fixed that in April, but I waited until June.
Yeah, I was going to say it's like me and you at West Virginia waiting until the night before to go to the campus library to bang out a paper. It's like, you had 2 weeks to do it, bro. You waited to the last minute. I don't know. It is strange.
Well, the fact that you were in the campus library is one up on me because I don't know that I ever saw the inside of the campus library at WVU.
I had to. I mean, my house was always loud and doing something, so that was my only hope. But yeah, I did see the library more than you would think, believe it or not.
Good for you.
Yeah, man. I'm a scholar here. I'm a scholar. Any signs? Listen, Romano, I mean, you mentioned it's early. It's April. That's just the reality of baseball, right? Like maybe we still need to improve the bullpen. That's an obvious, right? We need more arms. But maybe the guys that we have can get better, too. They can maybe turn this thing around. There's a lot of season left.
Yeah, listen, Jordan Romano was a guy, when they signed him, I did like the deal. I loved him in Toronto. He was hurt all of last year for the most part. I think he pitched in like 10, 15 games last year, whatever it was. Last year he pitched in 15 games. See, I was right on the money, 10, 15. He pitched in 15 games last year. I like the signing as a flyer, not as, hey, you're my guy. Yeah. Do I think he can get better? Yeah, if he's the guy that was last night. The problem is I saw him pitch a really good, clean inning about a week and a half ago where he looked like he was on, and his fastball was, he's throwing 97 last night. His slider last night was biting.
Looked good.
It looked really good, but can he give me that consistently? I don't know if that's the case. I don't want put it this way. For what I saw in April so far, and again, I'm not judging you on your April. I'm just saying what I've seen so far.
Yeah.
I'm not trusting him as the guy to close games out for me. And I don't really want to trust him in higher leverage situations if I don't have to. If I can say I have got an arm that is slotted over him in the depth chart, I would like to see that happen.
What do you think about the tipping pitches talk, right? I mean, this is a guy that's been around since 2019, I believe, and they brought it up on the ESPN broadcast last night as well. And I'm like, I don't know. I know it's a thing that exists in baseball. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. Of course it exists, but it's like, could this just all of a sudden be a thing now with a guy that wasn't for the previous 5-6 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that because we're hearing all the time about, I saw a mechanical flaw. There was something in my mechanics that somebody caught. And you were thinking, how did that happen? Well, It does. I mean, you just for whatever reason, something changes, a little something tweaks, and the tipping pitch thing is definitely a real thing. Like if you,
I think it's how it's a weird setup too. Like he holds the ball real low and out there, so it's just an easy thing to go to tipping pitches, right?
Well, he can't hold runners on.
Yeah.
You can time him pretty easily to take off if you want to from second to third. People should be able to go from second to third on him pretty easily quite frankly, I think he balks a lot. Like, he does not come to his stop is pretty quick with a runner on second because I think he knows I can't hold this guy on, so he's rushing through. So listen, remember, he was hurt and missed a lot of last year, and is he now just kind of settling back in of, okay, I feel more comfortable? I don't know. I want to say yes, but he is so erratic sometimes. Just his whole setup, his whole stretch, his whole everything. He's just such a hard guy to trust right now.
Yeah, I will add a positive too before we transition. A lot of questions with the bullpen, with the lineup, all fair game, all valid criticism. Luzardo, dude. I mean, this guy, you talk about this addition, my goodness, this could be our saving grace is adding Luzardo to the starting rotation. It could make life a lot easier for Nola to get back into his rhythm, get back into the swing of things. You have Wheeler. This rotation should be able to take you to the promised land. It should. I mean, that should be a positive and a sign of hope for Phillies fans.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. The starting pitching is why I said earlier I thought they'd win about 95 games because their starting pitching was going to be so good on most nights. They will have the better starting pitcher on the mound, and just by that, you should win 4 out of 6, 7 out of 10. You shouldn't go through any prolonged losing situations because your pitching's so good in the starting. Now, Nola has not been as good as we normally see him. He was really good last night. By the way, keep this in mind. By this time last year, Ranger Suarez was like a Cy Young candidate, right? I mean,
yeah.
And you haven't seen Ranger Suarez pitch at all this year, let alone get that level of performance from people. So there's a lot of things that are going on right now that are nowhere close to as good as last year. Alec Boehm, Brandon Marsh, I talked about it before. Those two guys combined for almost 50 RBI in April last year. They have a total of 11 in April so far right now, maybe 12 if Boehm had one this weekend. So you've lost massive production from those two players. Nola's 0-4 with a 6+ ERA entering last night's game. Hoffman was an all-star. You're not getting any all-star performance from a bullpen arm right now. So think about the guys' performances, what they were last year and what they are right now, and the fact that you're 15-13 is actually should be a positive.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. The performances are a significant drop-off for sure. So
the problem would be, Rye, is if Bohm and Marsh and Nola, those guys just stink all year.
Right, yeah. Then we need turnaround, particularly at the bottom of the order. Absolutely. Bohm may be the key. Besides Turner and the guys up top, Bohm is certainly a key factor. All right, so I'm going to be a hypocrite for a second because I tweeted out the other day, can we stop talking about Shedeur Sanders as much as we're talking about him? Which is a silly request. That's never going to happen. On a Monday, I want to bring up why do we think Sanders fell as far as he did in the 5th round? And I'll throw out my theory. I blame the media. But, like, you turned on ESPN for the national media for the past month, and it's just Shedeur Sanders, Shedeur Sanders, Shedeur Sanders. That's all everyone's talking about leading up to this NFL draft. And I think that scares away teams, knowing the media circus and the attention that this guy's going to potentially bring to your organization when he's also potentially hard to evaluate as a quarterback, given where he's coming from. I think it was the perfect storm, and he was talked about too much. I know that may sound crazy, but I can't put a finger on anything else. What says Mike Gill about all this?
Well, I'm going to disagree with the media part, and here's why. Zion Williamson was the most hyped player I ever saw in my life, and he went number 1 overall. That didn't scare anybody off at all.
Well, you knew who he was, though. Like, that was a for sure, this guy's a beast, this guy's a number 1 pick. Fair point, but I think it was a little bit different, no?
Well, there's other guys, though. I mean, generally, when you are one of the best players, you're getting the hype. I mean, you're going to see with Cooper Flagg. They're not going to draft him number 1. He's going to be all over the place. Johnny Manziel was hyped. He didn't go number 1 overall, but he ended up getting drafted in the 1st round. And he was a guy that people probably should have listened to the media and said, look, this guy's a nut job, man. I think Sanders' biggest problem was twofold. One, the whole thing with the dad, if you are the New York Giants, why do I, as the coach, want to draft a player whose dad might take my job? If I draft this quarterback and my team is not performing, what is a great way to get me kicked out of here is, hey, let's pair him up with his father and have him coach the team. If I'm a bad team and I think my job's in peril and my job's on the line, why do I want to bring in a quarterback whose dad also might want to be the head coach of my football team?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And I'll also add, we talk a lot about the lack of responsibility that coaches and even some GMs have in certain sports. This is a prime example of it comes down to the owners. Like the NFL owners, whether they wanted him or did not want him, you could evaluate and assess him and say, yeah, he's worthy of a pick in the 1st or 2nd round, but the owners could have vetoed that.
Well, there was a lot of, and look, I don't know where it was with the owners in terms of this and that, the other thing, but Dion himself saying, well, he doesn't want to play there. He might not go there. We want to go to this place. Well, okay, you're not going to tell us where you're going to play, and maybe there was some colluding going on to say, hey, you think you can come in and tell us what teams you want to play for, which teams you don't want to play for? Well, guess what? You're going to go in the 5th round and have fun in Cleveland.
Yeah, and how ironic, dude. He ends up in Cleveland. Like, after all of that, he's going to Cleveland where quarterbacks literally go to die. So
there you go. Well, I'm sighing on the fact that the Eagles apparently were one of the teams that would have taken him in the 5th round, and the Browns jumped over the Eagles because they had thought the Eagles were going to take him with that pick.
That would have been nuts.
All right, Rye or Sigh for today's Monday show here on the Sports Best. Thanks, man.
All right, man. Thanks.
All right, there you go. Rye or Sigh is back again tomorrow here on the Sports Bash Live, and so are we. But don't forget, when we come back, we got today's Bet365 Play of the Day. I'll give you my picks for tonight's game. Somebody texted in earlier about the NHL playoffs. I haven't been watching a lot of the NHL playoffs, and I know they've been pretty good. But the NBA playoffs, you got some interesting games. That Knicks series, 3-1 now. I thought the Pistons may have won that series, but last night the official got in the way of that game. I'll give you my Bet365 Play of the Day coming up next. Stick around. More Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Time now for the Bet365 play of the day. It's my favorite play of the day. Sometimes I give you more than one. Tonight I just got one big one for you. How did I do on Friday, though, Josh?
Mike, you split the difference. You got the Lakers, Timberwolves over, but the Lakers didn't cover. They lost outright.
Makes me?
You're 157, 102, and 1.
157 wins, 102 losses, 1 tie. That's a push in the betting world. I got the Warriors Houston under 203.5 tonight. No Jimmy Butler. Those Houston Warriors games have been kind of grimy. So I'm going to take the under, even though it's really low, 203.5. See an ugly game tonight. That is my Bet365 play of the day. No Phils tonight. What am I watching? Oh, I've been watching Dope Thieves.
What platform is that on?
Apple TV Plus. Dope
Okay.
Thieves.
Is it, how is it?
Pretty good. It's it's based in Philly. They're like I don't know, the show starts out, these two guys are like fake DEA agents. This is like their whole thing. And they get tied up in something, and it just goes on
Goes out of control?
Yeah, it gets on a wild goose chase. But
Sounds fun.
It's keeping my interest. Dope Thieves on Apple TV Plus. Maybe I'll watch that. Did you watch You on Netflix?
I have not seen that.
It's the 4th season just came out. So that just came out, I think, on Friday, maybe. So we might start to get back into You, the 4th season. This is the 4th and final season of You for the people who watch You. That's back. There's one other one that I think we've been kind of watching or waiting to come back or something. Maybe we'll get into that tonight. We'll see. Hope everybody has a great night. No Phils tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with a busy show. Frank Close has his Phillies mailbag tomorrow. Adam Kaplan will recap the draft. And, of course, you out there. Have a great night, everybody.